koutou. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Epic Aotearoa Create a Better Future podcast, and in particular, this special series, In the Service of Others, Who Dares Wins. Our guest today comes from a tactical policing and counter-terrorism background, starting with his role in the WA Police Tactical Response Group in 2000. Our guest then moved into the world of close personal protection in a post-war Baghdad in 2004, and following that went on to serve for 8 years in the highly secretive Air Marshal program, leading small team operations throughout Australia and overseas. Our guest today, also after 15 years of law enforcement, he's adapted his knowledge, skills and experience across a number of industries, including construction, agriculture, mining and remote field exploration, for the purposes of helping to mitigate risks faced in those particular environments. With a keen interest in military history and professional development, a chance invitation for our guest today to walk the Kokoda track in Papua New Guinea in 2009 kick-started the next stage of his life's journey, becoming a trek guide, eventually morphed into his own trekking business called Kokoda Crossing. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Mr. Travis Hocart. Welcome, brother. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Thanks, Brian. That's a hell of a welcome, fellas.
It took me a long time to get my head around a lot of those words, but mate, it's great to have you, and thank you for making time. For those that be tuning in, we've just spent. Travis has kindly spent the last sort of 45 minutes, almost an hour, working with us to try to get this sorted out, because both Brian and I were not much help to him in getting him onto the software. So well done, Travis, for persisting, and thank you very much, mate.
That's okay. We've had to adapt our skills over the years, mate. It wasn't an issue for us when we were probably serving in the police and the military, but this day and age,
I reckon, Man, but so good to have you on, and thank you very much for making time. We're mindful of your time, Travis. But mate, I guess looking at the information that you provided, because we've had a little bit of a back and forth, and you've sent through some really interesting topics which we really want to delve into with you. But I guess as every experience and story, so I'm told, has a beginning, middle, and an end. Maybe you could talk us through perhaps the beginning, where you're from, first of all, and sort of what your drive was to join the police force in general and move on to do a couple of things from there.
Yeah, so originally I'm from Melbourne with my family, and we moved over to Perth when I was about 13 years of age. And from there, I went through high school, and then my interest at the time was actually in physical education. So I went to uni, did a Bachelor of Science majoring in human movement. So I was really interested in the phys ed side of things.
Yep.
And from there, I did what a lot of Australians and New Zealanders do. We grab a backpack and we go venturing. So I went over to North America and worked in the ski fields. And I worked with a heap of New Zealanders over there.
Right.
And there was an acronym for all us guys over there. We're known as Jaffers.
Jaffers. What was the definition of that, or the meaning for that?
Just another F in Australian.
Right. So the reason I asked that is because they have a similar term for Aucklanders here. And they have, just another Aucklander.
Yeah, but it was actually great working over there in the ski fields. The Australians and New Zealanders, there was a really good camaraderie. And I remember one night we actually challenged the Canadians to a game of ice hockey on one of the frozen lakes.
Right.
Anzacs versus the Canucks.
How did that go?
And we actually won.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty good. But we actually we played the man. We didn't play the puck. So
okay, I got you. Yeah.
It was our only way of any hope of winning, because we had no skills, and none of us had ice skated since we were growing up. It's in Australia, you ice skate, when you're 8, 9, 10 years of age at these ice rinks.
Yeah.
And after that, there's no exposure. So we had to get a bit aggressive, but we won in the end. And,
That's all that matters.
Yeah, it was great. So that was awesome, and I spent 18 months travelling overseas to Canada and America, and it was just a great wake-up call to the world, I suppose. And
how old were you, sorry, Trav, at the time when you were doing all that travel?
22 when I left.
22, right.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So it was a pretty good age. I'd been to uni, and I was still probably sheltered a bit, coming straight from high school to uni. I hadn't seen the world, and it was a great wake-up call for myself to get out there. And before the days of mobile phones and instant access home, you took off, and the only correspondence back home was letters, and also the occasional phone box where you found it. So you put in saved up your $10 worth of coins and put it into the phone box and you could ring home. So
Nice.
you had to survive pretty much on your own and learn to become. I suppose that was the start of learning resilience and yourself was back then. So that was a great experience traveling through there.
Man.
And,
Awesome.
So I did that for 18 months before I came home, and and at that point I wanted to. I thought I wanted to use my degree, but wasn't sure. So I joined a gymnasium just as a gym instructor, and got some experience doing that. And during that time in the gym, all these policemen started filtering through the gym and started talking to them, and I started to really look up to these guys and thought, these guys are pretty tough, you know. These guys are hardcore, and they walk into the gym with their uniform and their gun on, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. So I got talking to them, and then I realised that it was something I felt like I wanted to do, and I thought, oh, this seems like an exciting career. But when I chose that, when I thought I might go into it, I thought I could use my phys ed degree and become like a phys ed instructor at the academy. That was what I first thought. And then when I finally joined, I thought, nah, that's not where I want to be. You've got to be out in the street. You've got to be outside. So my catalyst for joining the police was all those police officers that I met that worked that came to the gym to train, and I was working there. Yeah,
that's awesome. And so I'm imagining, they must have been pretty receptive to your questions and stuff at that time. They didn't sort of flog you off. They were sounds like they were quite open and happy to answer your questions.
They were, and I think that is similar to what we probably get now. And you get young people talking to you now and asking questions about your background and what you've done. Right. And I think we're all quite deep down, you're sort of proud of what you're doing, and you're very happy to impart that knowledge. And so because they didn't brush you off, they showed an interest in you, which is so important in life, to show interest in other people and where they're coming from. So they said to me, Trav, give it a go. You should give it a go. So with that encouragement, I sent the paperwork through, and away you went.
Working.
Trev, when they were talking to you and they were showing interest, did they pull out their notepad and writing stuff down, and they're giving you that second look, that side glance as a no?
No.
It was all legit?
It was pretty legit, mate. Very honest coppers over in Western Australia.
Very good.
That's right. Mate, that's very cool to hear, and I love how you spoke about giving of your time and wanting to impart that knowledge. And also, it's a valid point. I agree 100%. You know, I think each of us are quite happy, and to a degree, not a boastful way, but to a degree, happy and proud of the stuff that we've been able to do. And if we can share and impart that knowledge like you've done and like you've spoken about, then that can only be a good thing for the next generations coming through. I wanted to ask you then, so with that encouragement and then stepping into that field, what was your police basic training and all that sort of stuff like for you as well? You would have been, what, 22, still 22, 23 now going in?
Yes, I was about 23, 24 at that stage when I went in.
Gotcha.
I joined the academy in Perth. And it was different for me. That was really different. Coming from uni and school and the looseness of travel overseas, going to a highly disciplined and controlled environment like the police academy was a massive eye-opener for me. Yeah.
And what sort of, I guess, what stuck out for you in terms of that process and you going through it? I get the very structured and disciplined environment. Was that difficult for you to adapt to initially?
No, I don't think it was difficult. It was a shock, but I felt that I could do it. I felt that I had the ability to do it, and I realised that just looking at and talking to police officers that were already serving, I realised that was a requirement. That's what you actually had to do. Yeah. And so I guess in a way I looked up to them and thought, well, that's what they've done. I've got to do what they do. So I followed those who came before me.
Nice. Yeah. And was there anything that you found particularly that stands out in your mind that you found particularly challenging?
I suppose getting my head around the fact that I was going to be a policeman and go into the world. And I did doubt myself in some ways as to whether I was actually up for it, whether I was a suitable candidate for that.
Yeah.
I never grew up thinking I was, really a tough bloke or anything like that. That wasn't me. And I felt that hearing the stories, it's like, geez, coppers have to be tough. They've got to be tough because they're in there in the streets, they're fighting, they're going to domestic disputes, they're going to pub brawls and things like that. And I thought,
putting yourselves in harm's way in between all those things.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, where everyone else is running to the left, you've got to run to the right toward the fire. Which is similar for all emergency services and obviously military personnel as well. So I think just getting my head around the fact that I was going to be in harm's way and I'm actually up for this was a question I asked myself.
Wow, awesome. And were there many, I'm interested, do you remember how many people did you start with, and were there many that failed or that didn't get through the whole police academy process?
Most of the guys got through. Yeah, we had a group of about 33, and I think about 30 got through. There was a couple that dropped out early days.
Yeah.
I remember one guy saying he dropped out because he didn't like shift work and paperwork. I thought,
what were you thinking?
What were you thinking?
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, it was a bit strange, but most of the crew got through, and what's nice today is that I'm still in contact with a lot of those.
Oh, awesome.
Former comrades from the academy.
Yeah.
We all graduated in 1996, so it's a long time ago now, 25 years, but still in contact with quite a few of them, which is fantastic.
That is, mate. That's awesome.
Wow.
So good to hear. Once you graduated, what was it? Is it called walking the beat? So you're on the beat for the next 12 months, 24 months, is it, sort of thing, or?
Yeah, sort of. In Perth, you generally go to the booze bus, what's called the booze bus.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, for testing alcohol, drivers,
sort
of things. You go to the booze bus, and then you get sent out to police stations to do general duties.
Gotcha, general duties.
I suppose you are walking the beat, but some people walk the beat in the city, which is legitimately walking around the streets.
Yeah.
And other people go to suburban stations where you're mainly in vehicles doing vehicle patrols. So that's where I went.
Right.
Later, I went to a station and did vehicle patrols for quite a while.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. That's awesome. And what I want to ask then, so we've got that brief snippet, because we had a colleague of yours, Todd, on not so long ago.
Yeah.
His one will be released a little bit later on, so I won't divulge a lot of the stuff that he had shared some funny stories, man. But how was it? So what was the catalyst for you then? Because you're in and pardon me if I get the wording wrong, but you're in the general police force, and then you've made a decision now you want to go to the TRG. How did that come about, and what was the trigger for that? Because you've graduated in 96, but you're in the TRG by the time in 2000 comes around, so it's not long.
No. I spent about 2 years doing general duties, and I just looked around and thought, what else is there? And at that stage, when I first joined the police, I was naive as to what options you've got within the police force, and that's something that was a real opener, because when you get in, you get exposed to all these different groups, and you might get introduced to, you might go to a job as a domestic policeman, but you get introduced to the tactical response group that come and help out on a job. And
Gotcha.
all of a sudden you start looking around and going, all these other departments. And so I looked at these guys, and with the TRG guys, I looked at them all dressed up in the black and the big gun, and thought, I want to do that. It's like a kid in a lolly shop. Like, you grow up playing cops and robbers, but then you think, I could take this to the next level. And I think working with specialist groups in the police, there is, I suppose, a level of respect of those guys, not just the TRG, but there's other specialist groups. You've got the covert surveillance guys, and you've got the waterfalls, and people that have to do, I suppose, extra training to get there, and there's a certain level of respect for those people that need to train to get to that next level. And I felt that I was going okay as a general duties policeman, but I thought that, this looks interesting. This looks really interesting, and am I up to it? Could I possibly do that? And that was a massive question for me. Could I possibly do it? So,
and with that, what was your? So you're having that. Was there any doubt? Was it doubt? Is that what you were saying, or was it you had that question and then you wanted to go test yourself and try it out?
Yeah, absolutely, absolute doubts. I'm not a person who grew up with firearms or explosives.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't feel as though I was, as I said, tough. So absolutely doubted myself. And I remember talking to, and the reputation of the selection course for the tactical response group is that it's just horrific. Beyond words. That's relatively, speaking relatively, because compared to obviously Carter course and things like that, it's not the same. But as far as police goes, it's considered one of the hardest things. And
Yep.
I remember talking to one of my general duties colleagues, and I said, mate, I'm not sure about this. He goes, well, what can they do? They can't kill you.
Good advice. Yeah.
I thought, yeah, okay, they're not meant to, but
Yeah. True. Yeah, actually, yeah.
Well, not on purpose.
Not on purpose. Yeah. They're not meant to. It's not intentional. It could happen.
yeah, I have faith in that general broad belief.
Yeah.
It couldn't happen.
Well, that's great.
So it got advertised on the computer, on the police computer, the old mainframe days, and it came up as an expression of interest for the selection course. And so I said, right, I'm giving this a crack. I want to have a crack at it, see where I'm at.
Awesome.
Trev, did you find that that you as you reflect back that your mindset started to switch? Yeah, you started to think, well, I actually can do this. I actually can, because you said, you hadn't grown up around firearms or explosives, or and you don't consider yourself a tough dude, but well, you seem like a Liam Neeson clone to me. So we'll talk more about that later on with the Air Marshal thing. Yeah, I've got some questions about that, my friend. Anyway, so that, did you find that your mindset started to switch? You actually, as you started to do things, you're going, hey, I can do that. I'm becoming a lot. Is it because you were doing it, or was it because you were saying, I think I can, and then try it? What do you attribute to that?
I think I backed myself physically. I was always reasonably fit. I could always run, and I enjoyed going to the gym. So I felt physically that I could back myself.
Yeah.
And I spoke to a couple of, actually I spoke to a serving TRG guy at the time at off duty sometime, and he just looked at me and said, he looked at me in the eye, and I said, I'm interested in joining. He looked at me and he said, how badly do you want it, mate? Like deadpan face. And I said, yeah, I want it bad. He goes, because you're going to have that mindset. If you want to get in, you're going to have to be totally committed. So I thought, okay, I've got to have this commitment. Then I forced, a friend of mine had a contact at the SAS down the barracks.
Right.
Back in those days, we could source the Carter course selection program, the training course.
The training program?
The training program. It was like a 12 or 16-week training program.
Yeah.
And of course, this thing was going around on photocopy.
Yeah, it's pretty dated, eh?
Secret document. And so I remember this guy. I sourced it from this guy down there, and got it, and it had all this bloody training, and it's got pack marching for 20 kilometres at 35 kgs, and I thought, oh, geez, it's going to be horrific. But in the police, we held the SAS guys up here. We just thought these are the guys of the cream, and we wanted to be like those guys. We wanted to work hard, and we felt that if we trained to a level that the Carter course guys were training to, then it would stand us in very good stead. So we really, I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass too much, but we really held you guys in very high regard. So we got this document, and I started training it and using it. I thought, right, I can smash this. I can do this. Not knowing if I'll pass the course, but my intent was to prepare as best as I possibly could to give myself the best chance. And if they felt I was suitable, that was going to be a great day.
That's awesome. Good question, B. Thanks for answering that too, Trav, and going through that, taking us through that process. Because, and I love how the serving TRG guy that you spoke was deadpan, gave you that response. That's a great response. Did he crack at all later on and smile, or it was just deadpan the whole way, and it was a pretty serious, but pretty straight conversation reply?
Yeah, it was a pretty straight conversation. He was
a
serious guy, but top operator. He's one of the better guys that's obviously been through TRGs. He's left there now, but he's got a very good reputation, and you guys may know him well. But he was excellent and a wealth of knowledge. And I think he was, once he saw that I was really interested. It wasn't just a throwaway question. He started to answer a few more questions and go, well, this is what you're going to be facing. So he knew I was kind of serious at that time.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Nice.
One of the things that I loved in here, there's an interesting comment that you sent through to me here. So as a young recruit, you had a squad leader tell you something that I thought was pretty poor, to be honest, but it's always stayed with you. And it's something that you've never forgotten, and that it actually spurs you on. He mentioned something, I won't say the other word, but he reckons that you weren't a copper's backside. and it's something that you've used to spur you on. And obviously, we'll get to some of the many other things that you've gone on to achieve. But can you talk us through, aside from that, what was your initial reaction when you hear something like that from somebody that I would assume that you're looking up to at that stage? So a squad leader. Is a squad leader somebody who's going through the academy with you, or are they already in the police force?
Yes, so they're going through the academy with you.
Right.
They've been basically voted as the squad leader who helps you with the runs through the drill. So drill's very important in the academy. So they're the I suppose the appointed squad leader. So so he was he had a military background as well. So he came from that background, and it wasn't him that told me that I wasn't
right
a copper's backside, but he was relaying a message. From somebody else, and he was actually very supportive.
Yes. Yep.
He was actually quite supportive of me, but he was relaying that message, and it was pretty hollow. I felt felt pretty gutted. I felt that I was doing okay in the academy, but when clearly that people's perception of you is often not the same as what the perception of yourself is.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can go the other way as well. Sometimes it can be a lot more positive than you think of yourself.
Yeah.
But on this occasion it wasn't. And once I heard that, it was gutting. But I regrouped and thought, well, that's not going to stop me. That's not going to stop me. But I've never forgotten it.
Yeah.
I've never forgotten how it made me feel.
Yeah.
And that's 25 years ago.
Wow.
So I think, well, okay. During that time, obviously, I moved on to different things and achieved different things. And and look, but they might have been right at the time in some way, because as I said, I didn't view myself as a tough bloke, or perhaps what I thought was required to be a policeman, and maybe I didn't portray that. But what it maybe shows is that you can adapt, and you can train, and you can learn, and you can better yourself. You're not just born into a certain role in life. You can actually change and learn skills and adapt. And if you can do that, that stands you in good stead for progressing through your life and taking on brand new challenges.
Brilliant.
Wow, that's really cool, because it sounds, just the way you described that, it just is, I think, a testament to, well, not only to yourself, of course, but it's also a great what's the word, lesson for others, for those that may be listening, that 100%. Somebody's perception of ourselves does not have to become our reality. We can take on board, okay, cool, I hear you, I acknowledge that, but this is what I'm going to do. So what I'm wondering is, I can imagine how you might have at the time, but the question I actually wanted that popped in my head is this: from your experience, from all the time, right, from a leadership point of view, what do you think would be the lesson there as a leader? Because obviously this guy is a recruit as well, and he's relaying a message. But now that you've got time to sit back from the outside and reflect on it, from a leadership perspective, what would be the lesson that you would have gleaned from that, do you think?
Yeah, so I think he actually responded very well, and I think that one of the biggest important factors of being a leader is you have to show empathy. Empathy is such a massive thing. You've got to show empathy, but you also have to back in those people under your command or control. You've got to back them in, and you've got to encourage them. And one of the big lessons that I've been reflecting on recently through my learnings and people I've dealt with is that leadership is a positive energy transference. So what he did was, he didn't say to me, Trav, this guy's probably right and you should piss off. He just said, look, Trav, I don't necessarily agree with that, but just so you know, that's the perception.
Right.
But mate, I think that that's not necessarily the case. And he said that he went into bat for me. So I think from that way, he actually did very well. And he was only a young leader himself at the time. If you think about that, he was only a young man himself. So leadership qualities we learn all through our lives. I'm still learning things about leadership, and he wasn't much older than I was.
Yeah.
So I think under the circumstances, he did really well, and it probably resonates with me now. If you do hear a bad message about someone, then how do you approach it? How do you approach them? I suppose you should be reasonably honest, but you could say, right, if we need to work on things, let's work on that. Let's work on you as a person, so you're not, viewed like that anymore.
Yeah.
So it's just one aspect of leadership, and out of a multitude of things we have to use as leaders.
Definitely.
Beautiful. I like that.
Great points. Thanks, Trav. Thanks, B. I wanted to delve into a little bit more on your TRG selection from your perspective. How was that for you? How was that whole going through the selection process? So you're there now, you're rocking up, it's day one, and then you're into your TRG selection process. What was that like for you, Trav?
Yeah, look, very nerve-wracking. Absolutely very nerve-wracking.
I bet.
Rocking up to the office in the city. The office used to be at the headquarters, so you rocked up there. I think we began at 10 o'clock at night. That was when the shift began. I thought, what have I done? this is scary. And I saw when we arrived at headquarters, I noticed a couple of existing members get their gear out for patrol. They're heading out on their patrol for that night.
Right.
Their bag, and they had their SMGs and their pistols and had the gas, and I'm like, oh wow, this is the real McCoy. This is real. And then you were treated like every selection course. Right, line up, dump your bags there, and line up. That's it. You're ours now.
Yeah.
So I was very nervous. And I just said, right, to myself, you've just got to go. You've just got to keep going. You've got to just do as you're told. Just do as you're told. And don't be negative. Just put your head down and you go until you physically can't do anymore. That's it. So I think I prepared mentally well for the course, expecting the worst.
Awesome. Man, that's great advice. And I love how you've shared there. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of your mindset, aside from being fairly quite fit and capable and prepared in that way, in that physical sense, mentally it sounds like you were just ready to do whatever was asked of you. Is that right? Like whatever they came up with, because it's when you mention that rocking up on the first day, you generate all sorts of emotions and feelings that come back, like the nervousness, the scanning and eyeing everybody else and go, man, that person looks awesome, man, that person looks big and strong. It's like, what the hell am I doing here? And then but your ability, how did you control those emotions throughout? Like, aside from, was there anything else that you used aside from, okay, I just got to do what I'm told? Was there any other strategies that you had, Trav?
I think the key is preparation. I felt that I was prepared.
Yeah,
and
cool.
Preparation is a massive word. I think preparation is something that we need to put up in highlights for every person. Is you've got to prepare. You've got to prepare. And if you prepare, you can go into activities and tasks with just that little bit more confidence, because you know you've done all you can. And even if you fail, you've done absolutely all you can to prepare. So that was my biggest thing. I'm just going to go. I've done the work physically and mentally. I've never been challenged like this in my life. What's it going to be like? I've never been abused. I won't use the word abused, but haven't been challenged mentally like you do on selection courses. So for me, I just felt that I prepared as best I can, and that gave me confidence just to attack it and just see where it went.
Oh, wicked, man. Awesome. That's great to hear. And I know that reason I asked that is because we've had a few people since asking about certain aspects, and more so to do with selection lately these days and preparation. And it's always interesting asking our guests like you that have walked a very similar path and done a whole bunch of other things in addition, so that people to help them. So I know that people will benefit from what you've just shared there in that preparation. I loved how you spoke about you can adapt and you can learn and you can change. Some really important parts, and that positive energy transference from leadership. Some great snippets so far, mate, and we're only a little way into this. But let us know if we're holding up too much of your time, because we can reschedule you.
It's great reminiscing, actually. It brings back a lot of memories that you don't often think about. So far away, I'm really enjoying it.
Awesome. Oh, that's great to see or great to hear as well, because that's a key part as well, not only for our audience, but hopefully our guests like you that we're lucky enough to have gain something from it, whether that's the positive reflection and memories and friendships and all that sort of stuff, which is great. So still with the TRG and the selection process, and then you go on to the what's the further phase of training called again?
So we did this selection course, which is a 4-day physical. It's the physical selection course out in the field, and then they do what's called a 6-week close quarter training, which is
close quarter training. That's
CQB, close
CQT.
CQT. Instead of close quarter battle, they call it close quarter training.
Gotcha.
Which the introduction to weapons and then basic room clearances and method of entry and things like that. So I think the selection process has changed somewhat these days, but back then it was it was that 4 days. Then if you were selected from that,
Yeah.
that's when you got to go on to the next phase, the 6-week phase.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so you had to
And
pass 2 phases.
Yep. And what was that phase like, the next phase, the CQT? What was that like for you when you've now got this even more information, I'm imagining, coming in? What was that like for you, and how did you process that?
Oh, that was tough mentally. And I remember speaking to the sergeant at the time when he said to me that I'd been selected for the next phase. He looked at me, another deadpan look. The TRG guys have these great deadpan looks. And he looked at me and he said,
I bet.
he said, "So you thought that selection process was hard, did you? Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because this next 6 weeks is going to take you into the next level." And so I thought, bloody hell, I thought that 4 days was pretty tough. What the hell can I do? It wasn't so much the physical, it became the mental grind. And as you know from these courses, it's the safety protocols they have in place. You can't breach certain rules for safety, and if you do, they come down on you on a ton of bricks, and they basically threaten to throw you off the course if you don't get that right. So I was excited. Like, I felt a huge amount of empowerment because I passed the physical selection part of it. I thought, gee, I'm one of the small percentage that's got through. That gave me the confidence to think, you know what, I could actually do this stuff. I possibly could actually do this stuff. So I got a lot of confidence from passing that initial course. But then the next weapons stuff, that was next level. And we had ex-instructors from the SAS that were working with TRG at the time. And I thought, my God, these guys know everything. They're so talented. And all the existing operators that teach you stuff, you just look up to them with such a high level of regard because they're in there doing it. And you think, these guys are just gods.
That's so funny. That's interesting to hear you say that, because regardless of, I think Todd mentioned something similar, but regardless of those environments where you've got to put in that extra training, there's a certain level of, I guess, respect that is held. Like, there's people in those departments or in that part of the unit that are held in quite high regard. And you think back and that is what we thought, like they're either superheroes or they're gods, like in terms of what they do. And then once you're there, you're like, oh, these fellas are uncoordinated just like me. Like, he's just as unco as me, and that person is quite a hard case. But it's to that point though, there are some very gunny operators, and I can't speak for the TRG, but I would imagine there's some very, very high level guys that you would have seen. And what I didn't ask Todd, what I want to ask you is, in reflection, is females. Did you have females come through, or are there females in the TRG that go through the same selection and the CQT and all that stuff with you, Trav?
I don't believe there's any operators at the moment.
Okay.
There's been a few females that have attempted the selection process.
Gotcha.
And have moved into the CQT phase at some stage there.
Yeah.
But from what I know, I don't think there's been actual operators that have come through.
Okay.
But they are welcome to try out. They're assessed like everybody else on the same level. So unlike the normal police entry requirements, where there's different standards for females and males, when you're going for specialist squads, like, well, I know for TRG, I can only speak for them, but the physical standards
the same,
which obviously makes sense because you're to do the same role.
100%.
So I don't think at this stage Western Australia has had a female go through successfully at the moment.
Okay. Do you know of any females at all within Australia that are part of the TRG during your time, or?
I think I did hear that there was one perhaps in South Australia with a
awesome,
potentially. But I know when I was serving, I believe there was one even in London. In what's their group called over there?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Tactical group. I believe there was one operating in London at the time.
Wow.
But hey, there's a multitude of different tactical groups around the world, and I'm not too sure of the status, but certainly not as many as perhaps Israel have. I think Israel.
True.
They lead the way with hardcore female warriors.
They do, They do, definitely. Or at least that's the perception, anyway, from what little I know and have seen. So, man. Oh, well, cool. No, thanks for that. Because, that was definitely a question I forgot to ask Todd, but I thought it's all right. I can make up for it and ask Travis. So on yours, what did you find? How many started on your CQT and how many finished, Travis? Like, everybody that finished that selection, did they complete the CQT?
So we had about 33 start the selection process.
Yep.
Then we had 12 or 15 guys actually finish the physical selection.
Yeah.
Then they selected 10 to go on to the close quarter training.
Gotcha.
phase. And from there, we came out with, I think, 6.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Yes.
Tough.
So what was so when you're on during CQT, and you mentioned again, unlike some of the others that we've spoken to, and they go, "Oh, I grew up with firearms, like it just basically coming, it was an extension of my arm, whatever," and you haven't. Now you come into what I can only imagine is just intensive firearms training and weaponry compared to, say, even to academy, which you would have got an introduction to it. How did you find that when all of a sudden here's your weapon, here's whatever it is, or weapons, and it's just constant boom, 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 you're doing your thing? How did you find that?
Oh, mate, it was intimidating. This was
He loved it.
because also we were using your old training stuff, so it was like we're the SAS hand-me-downs. So we used the old kill house from Swanbourne, with a Strammer. That was our main training venue for CQT. Was the kill house. So the fact that we're in the SAS's kill house was intimidating enough. And to think, right, you've got to go in there and not shoot your comrades and shoot those targets accurately. It was really intimidating. But you did get confidence very quickly. So once you started doing some run-throughs and you successfully hit targets and the instructors said to you, that was good, that was really good what you did there, all of a sudden you start to get confidence. And once again, there was positive messages coming through, and from positive messages, it gives you confidence to then attack the next phase. So from what was intimidating at the start, you became more comfortable as the weeks progressed.
Wow.
Awesome.
Did you find like these hand-me-downs? Did you find an old MP5 with "This is Joe's gun" on it, written on it, on the side of it? Any chance? No.
I think it said Joe was here.
Joe was here.
Joe was here. No. But there are, they do get handed around, don't they? That's cool. I like that whole aspect and just the picture that you're painting there, because it's casting my mind back, but it's also, I know it's going to be helpful for our listeners, hearing you speak about these experiences. And I wanted to ask you, so just on the back of that, when you're going through and probably looking more now, you've graduated the CQT, what was the biggest, or was there a point that was just really eye-opening now where you're using the stuff that you've been training for, that you've looked at, these people that you've looked up to, and now you're in the field and you've got to utilize it? I guess not so much were there moments like that, because I'm sure there were, but was there a point where you got to where you thought, man, this is real now, it's go time, like we've got the call up and here we are?
My very first job that I went on was the
right.
Starting at the squad was one thing, but the actual job where it's like you get called into the office and they say, right, we've got this job, and they say, right, the team's going to be, and they read out the names, and then your name's on it, and you think, oh my God, okay, because straight away, as you know, in these squads, you do not want to be the weak link. You do not want to let anyone down. It comes down to not stuffing up, I think. The fear of failure is huge. So that was massive. And there's some of these early morning jobs we'd do. So you'd have to be at the office at 3 o'clock in the morning to prepare, have the briefing, and you're tired and you think, well, this is the real stuff. This is real. We're gonna kick a door here. We're gonna kick a door, and then actually walking to the house, and you're dressed up in all your kit, and you've got your weaponry, you've got your MOE tools, and you're walking along at say 4 o'clock in the morning at this stage. You're going, what am I doing? Is this real? Is this happening? Is this happening? But when that door gets hit, mate, you've got to go, well, this is happening, and I've got to switch on here because I'm part of the team. And you've got to go. This is it. This is real. This is real. So once you get that first job out the way, then you realise you are part of the team, and that's it. You've just got to get better. You've got to get better at what you do.
Awesome. Can I ask Travis? And I think we asked something similar to Harry, because Harry Moffat, and he shared something when he's talking about when he going into houses and looking for a high value target, but that person's not there. But what you got is family, and children and stuff. How did you ever find that you're getting pumped up or geared up, or your mindset is, okay, we're going in, this is our target, this is what we're going to do. Yeah, you can see it in your head, but when you go in, it quickly changes, and there's kids screaming or what have you, and how does that play with your thinking and your approach to that job?
Yeah. Yeah, geez, I remember a distinctive job where it was actually after the 9/11. Sorry, it was after the Bali bombings.
Oh, right, yeah.
And there was some interest in WA with regard to potential Jamaat Islamiyah operatives over here.
Yeah.
So we actually did a couple of doors. We kicked a couple of doors in relation to that. And I remember doing that particular job and going in, and I went to a bedroom, and this was, this was early morning stuff. For the element of surprise, and there was 3 little kids in the bedroom, all in bed, sleeping. And I think I haven't thought about that for a while, so thanks for taking me back. I just think now, what on earth would those poor little kids be thinking? And you got these beasts walking to the room, well, not walking to the room. We hit it pretty hard, as you'd expect, given the potential nature of the targets, and we hit it hard. But no, you do. If you're a good operator, you can control that, and you can calm it down, and you can talk to those kids, and hopefully, bring it back down. But look, that's the nature of the job. That's the nature of the job. You go through these situations, and you can't escape it. It's a tough job, and at many stages you're at the pointy end, and these things you have to adapt to at the time. And not always that the bad guys or girls are going to be caught up in it. There's going to be innocents who are caught up in it as well, and you just got to show. We talked about that word empathy, and okay, how do you then switch? And I think that's one of the skills of good police officers is the ability to switch. So you could be, going through an absolute rage, but then all of a sudden you've got to turn that down.
Yeah.
Many cogs and go right. And it might even be the case where you remove your helmet, you remove your balaclava, and you talk to children and go, right, kids, it's okay, you're safe, everything's all right. So you've got to be adaptable in those circumstances.
Yeah, nice. Love how you mentioned that. Yeah, great points. Hey, good takeaways there. So this might lead into maybe a bit of the transition into the close personal protection space after this one, but we'll see. So I know, and I noticed when you sent through a little bit of information, you'd been in the TRG now for a couple of years. We've got through that first experience, and we've been able to you've cast your mind back to a couple of different situations, and I know that there'll be many more, but we won't harp on or delve into those too much. But a couple of years has gone by, and you mentioned the term a bit of cruise control mode, and a conversation that was mentioned or discussed with you, identified and told, maybe work a little bit harder to reach your potential. And there was a great point which made me reflect in your comments. You thought it was a good lesson, is that, are we really giving it 100%? How did that come about? Could you speak to how that conversation came about, where you were feeling like, I guess, you're a bit of cruise control mode, and then this person that's identified that has had that conversation with you and had that open, honest conversation with you?
Yeah. So this particular individual, he was an acting sergeant at the time. So he took over our particular team, and he introduced, I suppose, performance appraisals, I guess would be a
gotcha.
Of it. So he went through everyone and said, right, and went through everyone's where they were at the time. And he said to me, look, you're doing well. You're a valued member of the team. You're doing everything right. But I think that you're not quite giving it 100% of what you can do. I think you're cruising a little bit. And I think you can do better, particularly when it came to things like CQT. You could just be perhaps a little bit more intense. You could step it up a notch. And like, I suppose, criticism sometimes is hard to take when you're the big shot. Yeah. But I thought, I did go away and I reflected, and he was right. He was absolutely right. I was cruising at that point. And which is not good enough when you are in a squad like that. Because you're at the end of the line, and you're there when perhaps other capabilities aren't there to fix the situation, to resolve it. So you are the last line. And I thought, no, you got to, okay, if people, that's their perception, then maybe there's something in that. And so I did. I went away, and I felt that I stepped up my CQT training a bit and become a better operator after that. So it's a lesson learned. Take those criticisms, go away and reflect. Don't have to respond at the time. Take a breath, go away, And I think we're all pretty good at analysing where we're at. If we're realistic, I think we all kind of know roughly where we're at.
Yeah. That's a great point. I think there's a lot of truth in that as well. I love, and this probably leads into the next question that I want to ask you, because I was meant to ask you this earlier, but I forgot till you've just mentioned it now. Is that a common thing for you guys to give quite straight and or maybe somewhat perceived as negative feedback to each other with the intention that it's not coming from a dark place, it's coming from a good place, but I just want you to be better next time you go through that door, or I want you to do, be more cognizant of this is what you've done. Like, were those conversations regular and frequent within the TRG?
Yes, I think that they were common, but I think also you're driven along by you don't want to be left behind. You always want to be seen as at the same level as everyone else, if not better. And I think that's just in our nature. Guys of our nature have gone through these processes and worked in these squads. You don't want to be the weak link. You don't want to be the last one selected.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that alpha male coming through, but you want to be as good as the next big dog. You want to be just as good. So there was that subliminal pressure to drive you along as well.
Yeah,
but like you guys would always have after action reviews and job debriefs, would always go through and say, right, what did we do well? What could we do better? What did we do well? What can we focus on next? So those debriefs or after action reviews were always common, and I think we all took a lot out of those for sure.
Awesome. That's great, man. I love how you and having that awareness, because I know I've struggled with that a lot of times, even service, with taking that step to reflect on the feedback that's been given, because sometimes I haven't liked what I've heard, especially when it comes from my wife. So there's a question there that I want to ask you. Are you married at this stage when you're going through this part of your life, like before you join the police force, or whilst you're in TRG, you've gone through the selection and the CQT? Are you married at this time, Travis?
No, I wasn't. I had a girlfriend at the time, and it was a challenging time for me because on I think it was my second day of CQT, my then girlfriend informed me that she was leaving and she was heading back interstate to live. And that was pretty hard to take because it was somewhat unexpected at the time.
Yeah, I bet.
And I remember being on the range up in the hills where we were doing our training, and I remember trying to focus on the target, and I was crying. I had tears coming behind my mask. I mean, I was hiding it from everyone else, but they were coming in behind my mask, and I was crying because I was actually really gutted. I was actually gutted at the time. And I had a debrief with my training crew at the end of the first week. They said to me, well, how do you think you're going? And are there any issues that are affecting you? And I said, well, yes, there's an issue affecting me.
Oh, no.
And they were very good, though. They were very good. And one thing that I do value highly from my time at TRG was the empathy that all the guys showed each other. And you can tell each other anything. And I think that sort of brotherhood is so important. And I'm sure the military background, same sort of thing. You could talk to each other about anything, and a lot of you had experienced those same things before, so people could empathise. So at that point, I became single very quickly, and then I had a girlfriend during following that. Another girlfriend that I was with for a lot of my time, but during my TRG time when I was also serving overseas as well, with great support at the time. Not with that person anymore, but that's where I was at.
Yeah, wow. Mate, I just want to thank you for mentioning that, because there's some stuff here that I'm not going to mention the names of people and stuff here, but the courage and in my view, the courage and the strength that it takes to share and speak to that sort of stuff, particularly from a male in a very staunch, stoic, strong background in terms of the TRG stuff and the Air Marshal and that sort of thing. The private security sector is not that common, at least not in my experience. But I was having a conversation with a very close friend today who's still serving in the unit here in NZ, and what they've been really enjoying is the openness and honesty of those that have come on and spoken about very private, personal things in relation to the effects on their own life and the effects of that on their families, because that's where a lot of and sorry to divert a bit, but that's where a lot of some of the problems are for operators. And I'm speaking from a military perspective this time, because I'll tell you now, and without a word of a lie, the guys in the unit they're not that empathetic. Like if you are struggling, like what you've openly shared here, which I really respect and am grateful that you've done, guys. Like I know for me, I'd be hidden away in a corner. There may be one or two key friends that I would speak to, but to know that the TRG, at least in your time, has created that environment, that should be acknowledged. And I'm glad that you've mentioned it. It's a real testament to what's happening there. But I know that the Defence Force could, and I know that they're trying to work towards the things that you just mentioned. But I know that there's guys there that just they would view themselves as being weak. They would be worried about what other people would think about them, rightly or wrongly. But what you've touched on and spoken about, it takes a lot of courage and strength, and I hope that our listeners, including myself, can hopefully take a step back and utilize and leverage some of that, because that's an amazing thing what you've just shared, Travis, and I really appreciate you for doing that.
Yeah, I think, and just touching on that too, and what Brian spoke about before, the word leadership, that's where it starts. And if you've got the right leaders in place in your team, they can drive that. They can drive that culture. And I certainly don't want people to think that I'm talking about we're getting soft. Okay, it's not what we're talking about. Mate, these are still the hardest blokes you'll ever want to come across.
Wouldn't want to come across them at 2-3 o'clock in the morning.
No.
Or any time of day.
Hello.
Yeah, 100%. So leadership, and that's where it starts. And you get so much more out of your team if you show the empathy to your team. And it's not bloody hard, but I think sometimes when you go through, you're reflective of what your experience perhaps. So it takes a circuit breaker at some point for a leader to go, well, I was raised in this way. I don't necessarily think that's right.
Yeah.
And this comes back to another point about reading and learning, which is we can talk about later how important it is. But if leaders are really good leaders, they'll educate themselves. They'll go and read and learn things and go, right, how can I be better? What are the lessons learned? And I don't think it's until you get older sometimes that those lessons are learned. Yeah. So if these leaders can just, it's not hard. It's really not hard. These basic principles, and look after your people. And if you show them that empathy, geez, you can get so much more out of them. They'll be there for you all the time. They'll run through brick walls if they know you care about them.
Love that. Love how you shared that. Yeah, because that's so true. They'll run through a brick wall for you if you can show that you care about them, that you're there for them. Man, that in and of itself is just a topic that we could delve into. Maybe we do that another time. But I love those comments there, and I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people. Just what you've shared there, Trav. This is going to, because there's so much, and we're still only going to just basically scratch the surface of our time here with you today. But going through the TRG stuff, we've got a whole bunch of information from you in terms of what that process was like for you, but also learning points which we can take away and which our listeners will take away. But then you've moved into the private security sector. What was the drive behind that? Like, I'll speak for myself, and I know some people that I was lucky enough to work with on the circuit at the time. And I noticed one of the images that you sent looks like it's the Baghdad International Airport where you're doing a drop off. When I was like, hey, I know that place. But I know driver for a lot of people that went over was financially. There's quite good money to be made at the time, and people were able to get ahead in certain ways. But why did you go into that space overseas and all that sort of thing, Trav?
Yeah, I think financially there's definitely that lure. There was definitely a lure of the money. I mean, that money that they were offering at the time for us, especially coming from the government sector, was a real whoa moment. It was, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well maybe I should consider it.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool. So I don't think we need to be dishonest about that. Of course the money's a lure. Of course it is. But also I was at the stage where I'd done 4 years at the unit. And also I viewed going to somewhere like Iraq as the real deal. Yeah, that was the real deal. I think that doing police work at the TRG, you're generally going to situations where you are going to outnumber the opposition, and you're very well planned, and you have the element of surprise. You can actually do things. You're in control of most of the scenarios. Yeah. So the lure was, am I good enough to take this to the next level and do the real stuff? Because I think that the military guys, you guys, that's the real stuff. That's the really big stuff. And so, am I good enough? Could I cut it in this environment? And so, a couple of the SAS guys had gone across and other military guys had gone across, and a couple of my mates from TRG had started to go across. And when you see other people go, it also gives you the confidence.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that I was a sheep, because, but when you close friends go, it then gives you more confidence. And so, look, once again, I was moving way out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Can I do this? Should I be doing this? And when I saw the look on my parents' face when I suggested it, I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
But a parent's always going to give you that look.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to the milk bar to get a pot of milk.
Yeah. Are you sure about that?
Yeah, make sure you wear your helmet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was that. Yeah, it was the lure of a couple of things, but
yeah,
can we transfer our skills, what limited skills we learned in that environment? Can we transfer them to the real world?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah,
man. And how long were you doing that for, Trav?
Look, I only did it for 7 months. I did 2 tours. My goal was to do it for a year. That was my goal, was to do 12 months. But during the time when I was there, the Air Marshal program was recruiting at the time.
Right.
And given the personnel who were in the Air Marshal program then, there was no better time for me to join. So I knew that I didn't want to work overseas forever. I felt, okay, I was having a taste of this. It's good. It's scary as hell. I want to do 12 months and I'll probably come home. And because the catalyst of the Air Marshals was after a few months, I felt that I needed to come home at that point to follow that path, because I was worried that if I didn't take that opportunity, that next course, I didn't know when the next course was going to be.
Yeah.
So I pulled up my 12-month plan short by a few months.
Yeah, wow. It's awesome. I mean, it's good to see that you had a plan going in, because I know a lot of people, once they got onto the circuit or doing that type of work, there wasn't necessarily a plan. It was just go as long as they could, make as much as they could, and then see what happens next. That was sort of the general plan of things, but great to hear on that. And I guess that's a nice little segue into the Air Marshal side of things, because it's highly secretive, and we completely understand and respect there'll be a lot of stuff that you can't speak about. But it would be great to know, I guess, from a perspective of what are you able to speak about, and what was that process like in terms of joining the Air Marshal. So from my limited understanding, you have to be a sworn police officer, is that right, before you can even put in an application? Or
so at that point of recruiting back then, you joined what was known as the Australian Protective Service,
right,
which was a division of the Australian Federal Police.
Yep.
So you went in as an APS officer.
Gotcha.
I think it's changed now, where you've got to be a fully sworn officer, I think.
Right.
Back then, but you still had to get sworn into the APS.
Yep.
It's still a division of the AFP.
And is that another selection, the AFP?
No, that was not to join what we did, not to join that unit. No, not at the time. The selection was basically just your background.
Yep, gotcha.
And that's what they were relying upon. So when the AFP began the program, they really relied upon the ex-Defence Force and the ex-police officers coming in to bring the expertise in.
Gotcha.
They really required. So I remember a couple of guys I served with in Iraq, they joined the Air Marshals at one point as well, and they brought in a lot of intellectual property that was transferred into the unit. So the feds at the time, and I think, well, to an extent still today, they very much benefit from the expertise coming in from externally.
Yeah, awesome, man. And what was that process like in terms of duration, or what's the selection criteria and stuff like in terms of when you're going through that to become part of the Air Marshal program?
Yeah, so the selection process was pretty much based upon your background.
Yep.
And I think that the guys in the unit at the time had a lot of influence upon who got to join.
Yeah.
Because I think they understood better than some of the existing AFP agents, they understood better what was required.
Yeah.
And if you think about the worst case scenario as an Air Marshal, you're at 35,000 feet, you've got a motivated group of terrorists.
Oh, what the? He's dropped out.
He's dropped out.
Hang on. Let me call him. This is how we roll here on this podcast. But we'll blame Travis. Where are we? I'm going to call him on WhatsApp right now.
Are we going to edit this part? No, I reckon leave it in.
No, I'm going to leave it in. I'm not editing it out. Trav, are you there? Mate, you've dropped out. Yeah, you've dropped out. Like Brian and I are still in, and it's still recording. And we want. Can you jump back in? All right, we'll wait. Yeah, all good.
So this is a shout out to anyone that's watching in the engineering space that would like to engineer our podcasts. There you go.
There you go.
Let
And
us know.
he said, oh, that's right. He goes, you can edit it out. Little does he know, I'll tell him.
No.
Better tell him, nah, bro, we're not
No.
editing it, bro.
That's not how we roll.
It's the Australian connection, WA
it.
internet connection. All right, interesting. I can, well, actually, no, I won't talk about that. I'll wait till he's back on.
Well, because the internet was got further to travel from WA, right?
That's true. It's got to travel further.
Yeah, many more servers.
There's that 5-hour time lag between New Zealand and Perth. So yeah, takes them some time.
Mm-hmm. So while we're waiting, we're just starting to talk about the Air Marshal program. Now, for those that are watching, anyone tell me that, like Travis, does he or does he not look like Liam Neeson? That's the first question.
Put that in your comments.
Yeah.
Put that in the comments.
Yeah,
when you see it. It's just our two mugs on the video because Travis has dropped out. I don't know if he looks like Liam Neeson. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see anyway. People will comment.
Yeah.
What? Or they won't. They more than likely won't actually.
They go, who are these two clowns on? Where's Travis?
Yeah. Where's Travis gone? Good question, everybody. Where's Travis?
Where in the world is Travis? Yes.
It's that Western Australian internet. WA internet.
Because didn't the Premier WA didn't he like looking to close the border again or something? So probably that's it.
I have no idea. Maybe they shut off the internet. So
they shut off the internet.
Can't connect in case COVID travels through the airwaves.
That's it. Yeah. 5G. Omicron.
Sounds like sounds like a transformer. Anywho, but man, hey, while we're waiting for him, just some really good points that he's spoken about, which I've already touched on, but that really caught me off guard. You know, that moment, gas mask on, tears coming down his face, relationship has just ended. But then having the courage to speak about that, it's tough, man.
I can imagine, because especially it's so unexpected. It's like, you're trying to do your thing. I can imagine the head space would be just like all over the shop. You're not even, he's probably just squeezing trigger, making sure it's not hitting anyone. It's just going in that general direction. But but his primary thought is about, man, what just happened?
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, the fact that he could share it was, I think that's important. And that goes back to what Harry was talking about, and Nick talked about this as well. That mental or the brain health side of things, and increasing that bandwidth. But that also means the bandwidth to share how we feel. Yeah.
Which isn't an easy thing. Even just for, my experience, just for males in general, it's not an easy thing to open up and share. So I'm glad that he has and shared that, because he won't be the only one. He won't be alone in that. I know there's a number of other people that have gone through tough breakups and that sort of thing, which is not a good space to be in. And I've seen some of the changes in some of those people just with their attitude and approach towards females in general when that's happened. Here he is. Let's go. Admit. Hey mate, you got us?
Hey guys.
Well, welcome back. We were just talking about it's probably the internet connection from WA, like not very good.
There's a few things not going very well over here.
Now you're side on, Trav. You've just turned your device, and now you're side on like that. There you go. Because I wouldn't be able to fix that in the video when I upload it. It would be first half you're like this, and then the second half you're going to be like that in the video.
That's not good for the audience.
No, it's not, mate. But no. No, that's all right. So carry on. You're speaking about and getting into the Air Marshal program and stuff itself. And I was asking what that whole sort of process is like in the selection. And you were saying more selected for with their background and their experience. And then you went and disappeared.
Yeah, that's right. Back on the dark web.
Yeah.
Yeah. So fortunately for us, the guys that were in the unit at the time knew what was required as operators.
Yeah.
And they knew more than the AFP agents who were doing the recruiting. So they thought, well, worst case scenario for this role is you're 35,000 feet on an aircraft and you've got a motivated group of terrorists who want to take over the aircraft. It's going to be a pretty ugly day.
Yeah.
So you need with a reasonably robust background in tactical awareness and that sort of thing. So fortunately, we had good guys in the unit who recruit people of our backgrounds into that squad. So it was a lengthy process to do, a lot of government bureaucracy and slow processing of paperwork and things like that. So it did take a long time for it to get organised, but once we were rolling and we went to Canberra, then we're on our way.
Nice. And without giving the details of it, were the validation processes in terms of the firearms training and the targets and that sort of stuff when you're having to go through that, like the practical application of the scenarios and stuff that you go through, were those more intense you found from your side with your TRG background, or were they pretty much on par or similar? Because it's quite different in terms of the makeup and what you're operating in with regards to how that might have worked. So I don't know all the details. This is just based on Chinese whispers and stuff that I've heard. What was that process, the validating shooting and all that sort of stuff like?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is that with the Air Marshals, you're operating in a very confined space. That's the biggest difference. I mean, not that you aren't in TRG if you're doing a room clearance or a house clearance, you're in close proximity to people as well. But in aircraft, you're in lanes, getting down runways and very, very small galleys and things like that. So we had to maintain our shooting standards.
Yeah.
We certainly didn't go beyond what was required at TRG, but we certainly maintained those standards that we brought across.
Yeah.
The difference being we weren't using long arms; it was all pistols only. Yeah. So our pistol shooting had to be on the mark.
Yeah.
So we still had very high standards that we had to hold ourselves to, as well as the close quarter fighting stuff as well.
Yeah.
And just wrestle and carry on in a plane.
Yeah.
In an aisle. I mean, imagine that. I never had to do it for real, but it would have been pretty untidy if you had to, fight in those circumstances.
Yeah, I bet.
Did you? I imagine in those early days, did you have? Were you able to select your sidearm, or was it a government issued Glock, or did you have choice in your weaponry?
No, we used what we were given.
It wasn't a hand-me-down, was it?
No hand-me-downs.
We couldn't bring anything from home. Unlike the Americans, I think the Americans might have had a bit of flexibility in that regard because they've probably got a selection of weaponry at home they can bring in.
Yeah, true. Hey, true.
Desert Eagle or something.
I've got to ask, Trav, before I forget. Are you guys traveling? It's always up the front of the aircraft, or for the most part, business class, first class?
Oh, mate, it's sort of wide and varied. Wide and varied based upon the circumstances of the day.
Yeah. Is it whoever draws the short straw gets back in economy?
It's who gets online first and makes their best. Like when you're trying to book a ticket to Eden Park or something. You've only got these road left in the front.
Oh man, right next to on the bulkhead.
What do you want? The best available or the most expensive?
Awesome, man. No, that's cool. And so, can I ask if it's all right in terms of, because I noticed with your Air Marshal stuff, you're leading small teams. I imagine they're small teams. Does that vary as well, without giving away the numbers, in terms of how many Air Marshals might be on a flight? Like, would you have a bigger number of personnel depending on the task, or?
Yeah, so there's always more than one.
Yeah.
I can say
Yeah.
that. And for overseas longer deployments, there's going to be bigger teams on overseas stuff, because obviously you're traveling for longer distances and that sort of thing. So you have to manage the team well enough over those long distances to make sure that you've got guys that are fresh enough to actually activate if required. So the various teams ranged in sizes, and that also affected our training a lot. So we're training in quite small teams, but then we train in bigger teams, and having to coordinate bigger teams is a big task, particularly if you're, say, working on a 747 up and down, and then you haven't got any radios or anything to talk to your other operatives with, so you don't know what's going on. So there was a lot of challenges when it came to operating in aircraft, absolutely. Wow. And we had to work out tactics that would suit us and utilise what we had in our environment that would work well. So you have to think about that all these tactics were pretty much designed from scratch once after the 9/11 attacks, and they formed these programs. Everything had to be done from scratch. So the guys could draw upon some information from the Americans and the Israelis who were conducting these programs from years before, but we had to design training methodologies to suit the Australian tactics and the Australian rules of engagement and things like that.
Yeah. Awesome. I heard an Australian tactic is to keep you guys like covert is to get a newspaper, but you just have like holes cut out in the newspaper so you can observe what's happening around you. Is that true, Travis?
I think the sunglasses were the biggest.
The sunglasses, yes.
In case you fell asleep and you'd have...
have the eyes on them, you mean? Or...
yeah, they're like big...
Oh, man, he's dropped off again.
This is why, ladies and gentlemen, these podcasts are free to air and unedited.
You have the pleasure. You have the pleasure, everybody, of watching these unedited...
amateurs.
Unedited. What I'm looking for a flash word, but I haven't got any flash words.
Unedited
movie length premiere. No, that's not even a flash word. Anyway, you know what I mean.
Okay, put that in the comments.
Yeah. You're paying nothing for it, so just no complaints. All right. So here we go. Here he is.
Okay.
Admitting. I hit admit.
There he is.
Sorry.
It's that, I'm telling you, it's WA internet.
Well, I think what they're doing is they're taking these border restrictions to a new level.
We were just talking about that the first time it cut off. Brian was saying he thinks the premier's closed the borders because of COVID. I was like, yeah, they've probably done the same with the internet in case it travels through here.
Well, apparently it's an insidious disease. They don't know how it's getting through, but it's
hard case. But mate, carry on with what you were speaking about, and so you side on again. You can't do.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, this bloody iPad. Hang on.
Is it doing the rotating thing? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sweet. Yeah, you're back. But Brian's question, he asked some question again about the eyes, and you were talking. It cut off just at that point. But anyway,
we had those special sunglasses on, didn't we, with the eyes, which were wide open.
What I found, what I was interested in, or what I found interesting, and it's good because we're mindful of not wanting to delve into too much details, but it's interesting about the no comms. Is that still the case? Like when you're on a bigger aircraft, or have they got comms now sorted so that you can have better communication? Did you have better comms sorted for that sort of stuff before you left there?
Not before I left, mate. So I'm not too sure.
Oh wow. Okay.
But certainly it's a massive challenge. I mean, as the great Dwight Eisenhower stated before D-Day, without communications, all I command is my desk. And
great comment, eh?
And that really, that was a challenge for us. But once again, you have to adapt and work out tactics that will work based upon what you've got at the time and what technology is available at the time. And I feel jealous in a way for all these new operators coming through, especially in the tactical groups and that, because their technology is just out of sight compared to what we had back in the early 2000s. They've got everything now. It's incredible. born in the wrong era.
Well, no, see, you laid the foundation, Trav. You laid
That's
the foundation for them. They stand upon the shoulders of people like you. So that's where they're
Giants.
at now, mate. Yeah,
Yes.
that's it. That's what we'll tell them anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, back in our day, the last of the hard selection courses.
That's right. Yeah. And then any other new cohort that comes through. Oh yeah, you guys are the beginning of the easy selections, eh? Yeah, I remember.
You can't bring up too much. Empathy only lasts so far.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
exactly right. Yeah. That's I think I remember when you were coming through. That's when the standard sort of they brought it down a bit to make it easier for people to get through. Yeah, I remember that now. No, but okay, so it's good, the banter and the rib jabbing. What I wanted to speak about and ask, I love how you spoke about, and this I guess for me is, what were some of the characteristics that you, Travis, looked for in individuals that were coming through, whether it was TRG, Air Marshals, or even those, obviously you were working with, sounds like a lot of people that you'd already worked with in the private security sector, but what sort of traits did you find were a commonality? Because I love how you spoke about never laughing so hard as when you were with the guys in TRG or in the Air Marshal. So obviously sense of humour is something that stands out. But what other things stuck out for you in terms of what made those environments so good for you and pleasing for you to be a part of?
Good blokes.
Love
Good
it.
people.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind, is that we were dealing with very good people. They were keen, they were enthusiastic, they cared about one another, they looked at you and they cared about what was happening in your day. They were just generally nice people that could flick a switch if required to turn on those skills if needed. So you just have to be a good person that you could get along with. You have to get along with people, don't you? You've got to have common interests, and that's one of the challenges we face when we leave these sort of sections, that you start working with people that don't have the same kind of mindset as you. Don't think like you. And we had arguments and things like that, of course you do, but deep down you all had this common goal and you knew you had to follow a certain methodology to get there. So look, that's one thing. It's very simple. It's easy to have a good bloke, but you also had to have a good bloke that was determined to be almost the best they could be and very focused, because we all know good blokes that are just not organised, they're off on tangents, and they might be good blokes, but they're kind of not very good operators.
Yeah.
So you've got to have people that want to be good at their job, and they want to switch on and focus and be better than what they were yesterday. And that's why these leadership qualities come through, like that sergeant that told me, Trav, you could be better than what you are. So you just got to think, okay, does this person listen to those instructions? Do they take those lessons on board and run with them? Or do they think they are just the God right now and they don't have to improve? Yeah. So you're looking for people that are not, stuck up. And that comes to another word too, humility and being humble. You don't want people to think they're just so good that, they don't look at anything you do. And that's one of the traits that I took away from my time with those guys, is that you just have to be humble, and there was no real show-offs in the squad, because if you did try and show off, the next bloke would drag you straight back down.
You brought down to earth pretty quick, eh? Yeah.
So I had to be very humble and very and not boast about yourself. That was one of the things that was probably the thing about in my era, was that you weren't allowed to really boast about things or promote things that well, which is somewhat different in a way now, because now I'm in private enterprise. I wish I had a heap more photos from my time back then. I wish I had a heap more reference material, because when you're in the private sector and with my business and things, you're becoming a bit of a salesman, and you have to back yourself. And it might sound a bit wanky, but you've got to sound a bit wanky in some ways to promote what you've done and the skills you can bring to the table, because in private enterprise, it's competition. It's competition, and without that, you don't survive. You don't have that safety net to fall back onto. So and that I'm probably going off on a bit of a tangent here, but
no, you're leading nicely into what I want to ask next. So carry on. Sorry.
So they're the sort of qualities that we saw that I think of with my teammates back then. They're the qualities that really stood out for me, and awesome. And I think they stand you in good stead as you progress through your career.
Beautiful, man. Great to hear. And just on the back of that, like I said, so you are leading nicely into the business that you have with Kokoda Crossing, which we haven't spoken much about, but we really want to delve into. I think I don't know about you, Brian, but I'm happy to leave the Air Marshal stuff there because I think that's given a great insight to that without hopefully without overstepping any boundaries and that sort of thing. But it's great to know that there's people that are in those aircrafts that are providing that level of service and care for those that are genuinely just wanting to get safely from point A to point B without having to deal with any other dramas. So thank you, Travis, to people like you and to those that continue to serve in that space. Much appreciated, brother. So yeah, on that, where you were speaking about those pieces with regards to the qualities that we're talking about, but then what it's led into, I think I had this conversation with Brian on a separate, just him and I conversation about the need to leverage the background and the experience and the skill, the expertise that you've gained. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. People might frown when you're in the unit. We're not going around talking about all that sort of stuff because we're comfortable and confident, and everybody knows Travis is a good bloke and he's a good operator. I'm happy to work with him. But when you get outside that and you don't have that safety net, as you speak about with the government security and all that sort of thing, and now you're on your own, you've got to fend for yourself. As long as you're doing it still, and I would imagine without having seen it, you're still delivering it in a humble way, but in a way that acknowledges and gives respect to what you've been able to do. And it's not just you, but it's also been the people that you've been able to work with who you no doubt are acknowledging as well. So could you speak a bit about the business now, and obviously the COVID pandemic has impacted that, and how you've also, so there's a number of questions in here, but we can break them down, but what you do now, Kokoda Crossing, will probably be a good place to start, and the impact that COVID has had on that, and how you've sort of adapted again and overcome that, what you've been doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, so the business Kokoda Crossing, I formed that business back in 2018.
Yeah.
And that came on the back of first walking the Kokoda track in 2009 with a group of friends, and the opportunity just arose out of the blue where a group of guys said, we're doing the Kokoda track for this guy's birthday and you must come along. So it was just, and I think with something like Kokoda, often it takes a conversation with a group of people who are already doing it to actually go and do it, because it's not something you just go, I might just book in and do the Kokoda track.
Not on your own, eh? It's not one of those sort of...
No, it's not. It's not at all. So when you have a group of friends come to you and say, we're doing it, that's generally what happens. You tag along to that.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened with me. I tagged along and did the journey in 2009 for the first time, and then I was invited back with the company I trekked with. They invited me back to work as a trek guide for them.
Wow.
Started that in 2011. And so from 2011 to 2017, I ran tours for that company.
Yep.
And at that point, I realised that I felt that I could do this my own way, and I felt that I could do it differently. I think probably a bit better, adding a few more offerings for people. And I really loved the story and loved what it was bringing to me. So I took the punt and formed the business in 2018.
Wicked.
And yeah, I had to become a bit of a salesman then, and that that's something that we do have to leverage off our backgrounds and the skills we bring to the table, and we can't be embarrassed about that. So the days of getting embarrassed are gone. You can't afford that. If you want to be successful in this field, then you've got to promote yourself.
Yeah.
Not you don't lie and carry on like that, but you know the skills that you think are genuine and you think that people will appreciate, and you've got to use those to then sell yourself to become successful.
Yeah.
So it was 2018 when the business kicked off, and that was really exciting times. Obviously, when you've got your own logo, you've got your website, and you've got your own T-shirts, and you've got your own hats. You think, wow, this is exciting stuff. And I was fortunate to have 3 small trips that year, my first year, including a group of local Papua New Guineans who were looked after for a trip. So there was 3 of those, and they did it through my company.
Yeah.
And then 2019 was better, so we had about 5 trips booked in, and we ran those successfully. And then 2020 was going to be a watershed year, and we had about 100 trekkers lined up. Had a big school group over here who were lined up to go with me, and it was looking really, really exciting at the end of 2019. I was pretty pumped.
I bet,
And I thought, wow, okay, we're on here. And then, slowly we started to hear some of this news coming through about COVID-19 and the impacts.
Yeah.
And then a few restrictions started to emerge in relation to travel, and then the red flag started to fly.
Yeah.
And soon enough, it was ripped away from us. And as we know, the last 2 years have been pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so for you, just the business and that is still going, right? It's still there. It's just taken I guess, hit the pause because of the pandemic.
It has. So what
Yeah.
I did was the actual Kokoda operations has been placed on ice at the moment. But
Yeah.
I did this year. I diversified a little bit. So I had an offering. There's a particular walk over here called the Cape to Cape Walk in Western Australia.
Yep.
So it goes from Cape Naturalist down to Cape Lewin. So from Dunsborough down to Augusta, which is
Yep.
about 130 kilometres. So there is, and it's a well-known walking track. So, but there is a demand for people to walk it and for guides to take people on those tours. So I ran one of those trips this year for Anzac Day, which was fantastic. So I took a group of people down there, and then we did the Anzac Day dawn service at the Bustleton War Memorial, which was fantastic. And the other thing that I did was I branched out and I reached out to a friend of mine. I'm not sure if you remember a guy called Terry Hewitt. He used to serve in the SAS many years ago. And he formed a business, an outdoor adventure business. And he's become a good friend of mine. He also does operations in Papua New Guinea as well. So he's been a great confidant of mine and also a great educator for a lot of the Kokoda track campaign over there. So he does a lot of work up in the Kimberley and doing really remote off-track expeditions. Right. So I spoke to him this year, and we got a group going for a remote Kimberley trip. Now, over half of my clients had to cancel because they're coming from interstate, and we had the state border this year.
Yeah.
So that was a challenge. But next year, I've got about 3 trips lined up for the Kimberley, and I'm running a charity tour for the Cape to Cape, as well as also I'm doing some work with another company called On Track Expeditions, and I'm representing them to run a Duke of Edinburgh Cape to Cape walk for 12 students who are coming over from New South Wales, which is going to be super exciting. So we're giving those kids the opportunity to do this magnificent expedition. So that's another example of how we've had to come together during this pandemic time. So On Track Expeditions are in some ways a rival company to me. They also run tours in Papua New Guinea, but a lot of the tour operators have come together to help each other during this time. And
awesome.
And they're all running tours for each other just to keep for survival, basically. And so I've got a great relationship with On Track Expeditions. I'm representing them to look after these kids. And so that's going to be great. So for the first half of this year, we've got some things lined up. The Kokoda stuff is looking promising, but for the second half of next year, we're having a lot of discussions with the Papua New Guinea government, with the Kokoda Track Authority, DFAT, and there's a lot of great shoots emerging for later next year. But of course, we don't expect anything. We hope for good news, but we know that things can change pretty quickly. So Kokoda Crossing has been kept alive. It's diversified a little bit just to keep things ticking over. Still trying to help people, still trying to offer people expeditions and tours that are going to do things they don't normally do. So we're still adding value, to which time we can come back and start doing the Kokoda stuff as well, which is a next level expedition.
Yeah, definitely. Man, great to hear. Thanks for sharing that, Trav. I was just wondering, would you mind speaking a bit about your actual, and it's great that the other, to use your words, rival companies in some ways are coming together. That's a great thing to hear, banding together and supporting one another. But I'm really keen for people to hear about your Kokoda Kokoda Crossing a bit more in terms of what can people expect when they come on one of your treks or your team, your staff, on one of the Kokoda Crossing ventures and treks over there. What sort of things can they anticipate with you?
I think that it can be a life-changing experience for many people, and I don't say that lightly, and I say that because that's the feedback that I've got. And people go across there, and I have to condition people before they go to basically say, you're going to a developing country. Papua New Guinea is a developing country. They're not designed for tourism. Things are going to go wrong. It's going to go wrong. It's just the way it is. Now, we do everything we possibly can behind the scenes to make it run smoothly. I've got a fantastic team of porters and operations staff who are based in Papua New Guinea, or the district. They do a great job behind the scenes, and they're still learning. They're still learning but for tourism, what they have to do, because the way they live in the mountains of Papua New Guinea is not how we live in suburban Auckland or suburban Perth. It's a different world. And I think that's one of the beauties of going to these places is you get exposed to a completely different culture. And you have to go with an open mind and say, it's not going to be like Perth. I'm not going to book into the hotel and everything's perfect. We're not going to go to the airport and the flight's going to be perfect. We're not going to get on that bus and drive to Kokoda and everything's going to be perfect. It's not. But ultimately, we achieve our goal at the end. The outcome is always the same. We get to our destination, and it's a hell of a journey on the way.
I bet.
You're exposed aspects of your personality that perhaps you didn't know you had. So it's a massive challenge, not just physically. People straight away think that Kokoda is physically challenging. Oh, I could never do that. It's impossible. But as we know, what's possible physically is very much controlled with what's up here.
Yeah.
And so we can tap into that with our clients and explain to them what's actually capable, what they're capable of doing. And I think when they go there, my big focus is on the history of the campaign. So yes, it's one of the most beautiful bushwalks you can do in the world, but we're there for a reason. And the reason is this absolutely mind-blowing story that happened during World War II, the sacrifice, the amazing sacrifice and courage that was shown by these soldiers. And you use that as a driver to help you along this track. And when you're feeling miserable and a bit upset, a bit sorry for yourself, you just have to tap into one of the stories we've spoken about and go, you know what, it's tough for me, but it could be a hell of a lot worse. And they can get through it. I can get through. And I don't have to put up with malaria. I don't have to put up with hepatitis. I don't have to put up with these horrific stomach bugs, dysentery, being shot in the ankle. So I think people can draw strength from that. And so that's one of the big focuses for me is the history of the campaign. And we do a lot of work talking about stories at all the major battle sites. I read a lot of diary entries from soldiers that were there, get first-hand account of what was there. And I find those very hard to read sometimes because they're pretty gut-wrenching. They really tap in, and I find that takes me on a journey every time I go there. I get emotional as well.
So it was you were speaking. The last part that I remember was around the journal entries or the diary entries that you were reading or that you will read along the journey of the Kokoda crossing stuff.
Yes. So I find that by having those journal entries, it really it brings people into the story. They can really feel, they can feel the story. They can feel the emotion, and they can feel what the soldiers were thinking at the time. So it's a really powerful effect. It's such a powerful effect on storytelling and learning history. So that's another big aspect of the tour is aligning with the history and getting involved in the story. And I've taken some soldiers before, and I've asked them to read a couple of diary entries, and mate, they last about 2 or 3 lines, and it's break down, and because it just resonates the suffering what these guys went through. So there are so many things that people will experience. They'll experience the mental challenge of pushing through each day under hardship, and when they're tired, they'll experience the physical hardship because it's a legitimately tough journey. They'll learn about the history of what happened there. They'll learn about Papua New Guinea history. They'll learn about the culture, and they'll be exposed to the culture of Papua New Guinea, which is just so different to our lifestyle, particularly in the jungle. Learn about their own resilience. They learn about working as a team, and also just to be around this amazing beauty. They learn about this incredible jungle, this tropical jungle, which is on Australia's doorstep, and it's just stunning. So there are so many aspects of this journey which it ticks so many boxes. It's just fantastic. I get really excited thinking about it. I get really excited about thinking next year if we can get back there. I'm really keen to get back. I'm so desperate to get back and see all the ports and get up in the mountains and give people this amazing experience if they want to come.
Sounds incredible. And how many people do you have per cohort or per group, per tour?
So we like to have groups we like to have at least about 7 or 8 people if we can, as a minimum, but we can cater up to anything. So for the school group, we had 30 students who are due to come. We four features. So we run those tours in a different way. We would have split a couple of teams, and so we're not just one big wagon train going through the jungle. But I wouldn't take people who don't know each other on a tour. So a sweet spot for a tour is around about that 12, 14, 16 type mark. That as a sweet spot. But if you have a group, then you can certainly take a group and look after them just as well.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Mate, sorry, Brian, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question. It just says, it goes back a little bit to what you're saying about the journal entries and stuff, but do you find that there are parts of the track that you walk and from my very fuzzy, limited understanding of the campaign, it's essentially Australia going up, the Japanese coming down, meeting somewhere in the middle, and that's not doing it any service at all the way I've described it. But do you find that there are parts in the trail or the track that you find that are just sacred? Like there's sacred ground that, like, this space here is where people fought and died, and they fought for a reason, whatever side you're looking at it, and these all the hardships are going, and you can actually feel that that sacredness. Do you find that?
Good question.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, there's definitely some spots there that you get the tingles when you arrive. A couple of particular battle sites. One particular battle site is called Brigade Hill, and that is just an amazing story. Brigade Hill, where the Japanese basically they'd encircled us during a nighttime navigation through the jungle. They encircled the Australian positions. The officer at the time, Brigadier Potts, he ordered an attack down the track to try and clear the Japanese. And it was similar to a World War I type action. It's fixed bayonets, extended line, through, and you had the Japanese sitting up in trees. They were behind logs. They were very well camouflaged, well positioned, and the Australians were told, they were ordered to push forward into this fire. And so that battle is just unbelievable. But what they've done is that at the time of the battle, they buried, a couple of weeks after the battle, they buried a lot of the bodies on top of Brigade Hill. After the war, they were exhumed and they were taken back to the Bamana War Cemetery in Port Moresby. But what they've done now to sort of not recreate, but for the memory of those soldiers, is for all those soldiers that were buried there for just after the battle, they've put a stick in the ground and a little bit of ribbon or a poppy on top of those sticks. So you walk across, you come up this really sharp ridge, and you come over the top of the hill onto the Brigade Hill, and all you see are 60 individual sticks lined up in rows with a ribbon on it, fluttering in the breeze. And people walk over that ridge and they just look at this thing and go, oh my God. And the only other memorial for them is a small plaque on the ground. Little plaque on the ground. And you compare that to there's another famous battle site called Ishiraba, which you may have heard of, and that's got a really large memorial. But this battle site, Brigade Hill's just got a tiny little plaque.
It's tiny, yeah.
Wow.
And the sticks that are maintained by the local villagers. So the villagers are in the ground. Yeah. And that up there, I read a couple of entries, and I don't think there's been a year gone by. There's a particular entry that I read. I don't think there's gone by that I haven't cried. Because it's written medical officer who is describing the last moments he has with a particular soldier from the 2nd 16th Battalion. So it's really, really heart-wrenching. But often up there, it's a beautiful view, but then the clouds will come in and it gets really misty. So you're on a mountain covered in mist, and all you can think of is the horrific battle that occurred there between the 7th and 8th of September 1942. And you just feel the ghosts of this particular battle. And that's one of the places that really resonates with me every time I go.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's incredible. The way you described it, I can visualize that in my mind, especially the mists, and I like the way you phrase it, the ghosts of the battle. It's more than folklore. I mean, it's legendary. It's up there with Long Tan. It's up there with Tobruk. It's Alamein. It's those battles that the way you described it, up there with those battles and the others. Of course, I haven't even touched the surface with the different battles that the armed forces have experienced. But what I've taken away from that is that not only do you walk a crossing or a track that is physically, emotionally, mentally draining on our senses, but you get a spiritual connection at certain points as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Spiritual connection. That's a great phrase.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Spiritual connection. Yeah. And you get them ongoing. So it's not like you just get it when you go to one particular battle site. You know, you visit a battle site and you stand there and you get it. You get it every day of the journey. you get a effect on you every day of the journey because there's a brand new story, there's a brand new battle site, there's a brand new there's a brand new village to meet and villages to meet. So every day becomes really unique, and it's this ongoing stimulation for, well, my tours can last up to 10, 11 days, and every day is unique. But with Kokoda, I don't know if you know, but there is a New Zealand connection with the Kokoda story.
Right.
Yeah, there is. There's a guy. It was one of the very first skirmishes when the Australians met the Japanese. Was at a village called Awala, and this was mainly undertaken by an infantry battalion of Papua New Guinean infantry, and that was being led by Major William Watson, who was a New Zealander.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. So he led essentially the first skirmish against the Japanese when they were coming down the Kokoda track.
With the Papua New Guinean battalion.
With the Papua New Guinean infantry battalion. Yeah, with a support of the 39th battalion from Australia.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I didn't know that. That's cool. That gives me something else to look into as well. But mate, those experiences and what you've just described, like Brian said, just to echo what Brian's mentioned, can absolutely visualize that, and that's why we wanted you to speak about that, what people can expect. I know that our listeners, when they hear that, will be excited, and we're pumped, and hopefully things start to open up in terms of the borders and all that sort of stuff so that you can get back there. What we want to do, just because Brian's got to jump off, is we'd love to have you back, but soon, within the next week, if that's okay. I don't know what your schedule looks like, but if we could do that, that would be awesome, so that we could then close up this particular session anyway, around all the stuff, because there's still things around the transition, the connections, and the importance of that, that need to step out on your own, and not having the security of the private sector. And you've mentioned some other things in here which I really love, the deep impact you can have by caring for people. I really love you to speak about that, because that links in with what you've just spoken about in regards to Kokoda, the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels, and the care and support that they show, and what you're doing in that track. There's so much here that we haven't touched on, and I know that both Brian and I want to have you back on so that we can really talk into that a lot more. We've got the policing background, and we've got the TRG stuff, which is awesome, the Air Marshal stuff, which we leave there because we're mindful of that environment and the stuff that's happening there. But also, well, maybe not so much these days with the travel restrictions, but might make it a bit easier for them, maybe. But then your stuff with the Kokoda, and also we haven't even touched on how you've been applying in the health and safety space and the risk space, and the need to adapt to that. And there's some stuff that I wanted to ask you, or that I will ask you. I've got a bunch of questions down here that I want to ask you next time we catch up. So it might take another hour or so next time. If is that okay with you, Travis?
Well, more importantly, is it okay with the listeners? It's a long time.
It's fine with them, I think. And the funny thing is, we never expected, this time feels like it's just raced by. I'm just looking at it now. It's only been 14 minutes, but the whole thing is well over. I think it's probably closer to a couple of hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not including the hour that we were trying to get things sorted. But time literally does fly by, and what I found was, we were when we posted these, we were nobody's going to sit and listen and watch these for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Next minute, the comments and support has been fantastic. So we enjoy sitting here listening to you, and I know that our audience will as well. So we've already had calls for more, and people saying that they enjoy sitting them and watching them while they're on their bikes and training and exercising and whatever. So many takeaways from you, Trav, and I just want to take this time before I let Brian say any closing words, and yourself, Trav. Just really want to thank you, mate, for not only your service, but the kindness that you've shown, and being able to come on this podcast with us and openly share a whole bunch of information with us with respect to those various units and stuff that you've served with, and maintaining the integrity of those, but also what you do, how you go about doing that with regards to not only your work, which we haven't touched on in the health and safety space, but with those Kokoda trails, mate. really eye-opening and heartwarming for me to hear the stuff that you are doing and the reasons behind it and the ability that you're able to have to create that spiritual connection, as Brian mentioned, for your tours and the people that go over there. So really grateful for your service, mate, as a police officer, as a Air Marshal, even your close protection stuff that you'd have done, looking after people over there in the Badlands, we call them, and just your ability to be resilient and adapt and progress and do the amazing things that you're doing now. And just want to thank you, mate, and appreciate your time with us today. And we look forward to having you back, hopefully next week, if you get a chance. That's pretty much all from me, mate, and really appreciate it. Brian?
Yeah, I just want to say that as for those throughout listening throughout Australia and throughout New Zealand, actually throughout the world, we'll just call it throughout the world. If you want to come and see a piece of history, this is the man you want to come and see and walk with. And you know why I'm saying this is because you can hear the passion of the history that he has talked about and all the experiences that he's gotten to date to help with your journey through that. You can hear it. And I don't know why you wouldn't want to go and do that, not do that. Travis, I just want to thank you too for especially the one for the banter and sharing your experience in the service that you've done. I appreciate that. But the second part is just in that short amount of time that we're able to talk about a little bit about the track and some of those sacred moments with that. You could feel it, you could see it, and you could feel the energy. So I'm grateful for that because I like to hear things like that. I like to read things like that because that paints a big picture. So I'm just going to give a shout out not only to you but to the Kokoda Crossing. For those that are listening and you want to try something that's outside your comfort zone, but you want to see history, here's the man you want to come and see. So thank you, Travis.
Awesome stuff, guys. Love that positive energy coming through from you as well, and I think that's what we have to fall back on in these times when we're being really challenged by business shutdowns and restrictions on our freedom of movement and things like that. We've got to remain super positive, otherwise we fall over. So it's been a pleasure today. Looking forward to when we speak next. It'd be great.
Yeah. Awesome, mate. Thank you very much, Trav. All right, and welcome back, everybody, for part 2 of this epic Aotearoa Create a Better Future podcast in the service of others. Who dares wins. We're back again for part 2 with Travis Hocart. Apologies for our technical difficulties that we had in the first session on Saturday, but we're back now, and Travis has been kind enough to join us. And sorry, Brian can't make it today, so it's just myself. Technical skills by joining us again, by being back on here, this podcast, and I'd like to say without a hitch, and hopefully we don't have any dropouts like we did in the first one.
Well, we took 45 minutes to get going on the first one, but
that's right.
Today's been successful. We learn from our mistakes, Joe, don't we?
100%. And this one, there's been no hiccups this time. It's been like logged in, bang, we're in, we're set up, we're good to go. So, mate, good to have you again, and good to reconnect and go over some of these things. And sorry that might have taken a little bit of time to just go over that, but there's been a heck of a lot of stuff that I've really gleaned from your words that you've shared with us to date, and I know there's about to be some more. So I enjoyed our little conversation that we had just at the start here off camera. That might come up a little bit later, but I've sort of listed down 4 to 5 key topics of things that I didn't get a chance to cover off with you when we first caught up. And they're based on the notes that you shared. And I really wanted, because I feel that it will be helpful for our listeners to really hear your perspective on these things, especially considering the experience that you have. But you spoke about the value of leaving the security of the government services and having to fend for yourself. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of challenges and stuff that come with that, and apprehension and fear and worry and concern and all sorts of things, I would imagine. But could you speak with us about that and what that process was like for you to A, come to making that decision, and then B, following through on it, and C, what sort of things did you experience as a result of that, like taking that leap of faith, so to speak?
Yeah, for sure. So toward the end of 2011, there was quite a few of us in the unit had been there a long time. This was the Air Marshal unit, and we got thinking, and we were looking outside into the private sector and private business, and we thought, geez, that does look quite alluring. And one of the comments a lot of us were making were, gee, it would be good to get paid according to our worth. Not necessarily according to your rank or how long you've been in there, but maybe getting paid according to what we perceived was our worth. Yeah. So we thought, oh, maybe the grass is a bit greener.
Yeah.
So it was a time when the Air Marshal program was, I suppose, downsizing a little bit, and they were offering some redundancy packages voluntary redundancy packages.
Right.
So yeah, quite a few of us left at the time. We thought it's time for us to venture out and try a hand at the outside world. And I was getting interested in things like the stock market and things like that, and looking at companies that make up the stock market. So I had an interest in that. And so, yeah, I decided now's the time to make the move. And a very good friend of mine had a building company, and he offered me a job in occupational health and safety.
Right.
So I'd gone and got some qualifications in that, and I had a couple of mates who had gone into that industry, and they said, look, this is really good. It'll suit your background. It'll suit your risk management mindset. So you would be quite successful at it. So tapping into this great mate of mine, he offered me a position, and then it was for the first time, there was no government salary each fortnight. I had to go and get myself an ABN, or an Australian business number, set up myself as a sole trader, and then I was engaged as a contractor doing occ health and safety in a building company. So that was the first foray into the real world, so to speak. And I did that for a while. Then I had an interest in the resource sector. So I once again, my network, and we should talk about that too.
Yeah, I've got that down. Network,
Yeah. So the network, I tapped into that again, and I was fortunate to get another occupational health and safety job in the drilling industry with a drill company working out of Kalgoorlie.
Right.
And that was really exciting. I was thought, oh, the pay's getting better here. This is what I was chasing, and it was a really tough though. It was really tough to transition into that part of it, and the transition from the services into these private jobs was quite tough for a number of reasons. And within a month of starting at this drill company, there was the price of iron ore had taken a massive dip. And in the resource sector, I realised that when this happens, they're very reactive. And so you go from, say, a drill company that has 5 drill rigs that are spinning 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the price of iron ore drops. So the clients, so some of the bigger companies who sell the iron ore, they don't need you. And it can happen within a few days that they make these decisions. And I was sitting there, and all these drillers and these offsiders, like the trades assistants, they lost their jobs in the blink of an eye. And I was dragged into the office, and they said, look, we need you to, we'd like to keep you, but we need you to take a pay cut. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I took a 20% pay cut straight away.
Around 20% straight off the bat.
20%. And from there, it continued. So there was no let up, and we lost more rigs were put on the sidelines, dragged me into the office again. Trav, want to keep you, need to take off another 10%. So 30% pay cut straight up. And so that was the reality. That was reality of what can happen in the private sector. And I know that we're always very concerned in the government about getting our annual increase, our small increase. I would have been pretty happy with that little small 2% increase at that time, as I took a 30% shave off the bottom line. So what an introduction.
What an introduction, all right. And how did you, so over what sort of time frame? So you got the 20%, and then what sort of gap between before they shaved off another 10?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, and so how did you, what was going through your mind then? And I'm really actually, please speak to that. What was going through your mind then, but also the next point that I have got down here was about the value of growing and expanding your network, because I'd love to hear how that network helped you, if they helped you in terms of getting into that space where you're at in the resources sector.
Yeah, for sure. So when I got that pay cut, it was tough. It was like, wow, this is the world I've chosen. So I've got to make it work.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate that a couple of my friends had moved into other companies, so I could tap into them. And then they said, look, we've got some part-time work coming up. Would you like an opportunity? So between all the work, I managed to still eke out that full-time income, but I was doing 2 or 3 jobs at the same time to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I was flying off to Port Hedland and working on the port operations up there, and flying to Kalgoorlie, doing work up there. So, hey, adaptability, flexible.
Yeah.
You've got to make it happen. You've got to keep rolling with it.
That's
So,
right.
so I
Man,
did. Yeah.
awesome.
It was challenging, but the network, which we've just touched on, was very important then. But it's also been so important since the recent issues with the all the travel restrictions and the COVID-19 travel shutdown. So that's been really important for me, not just financially, but also mentally, to have that network to tap into.
Yeah.
Because, hey, I went from hero to zero pretty quick as well. From having 100 clients lined up for a year's of trekking to zilch. That was really hard. That was probably harder than the first downturn that I went through, only because of all the work we put into building up the business and then having it ripped away. So my network I tapped into, my network had increased exponentially since when I first joined the private sector. I now tap into a lot more business people who had a lot more connections, and they helped introduce me to other people. And that's been really successful over the last couple of years for me. Really, really saved me big time.
Wicked. How did you build? I'm interested in that, because how did you build or manage to build and grow your network coming from a very secretive environment? It's not like you can go posting a lot of stuff on Facebook or anything like that in terms of the Air Marshal and TRG and that sort of thing. How were you able to build and grow your network to a point where you're able to leverage that to assist and continue to be successful?
I think it was from you had to come to terms with the fact you can't be shy anymore, and you can't hide away.
Love that.
At the base, where at training days where everything's fine. You've got to get out and talk to people, and you actually have to make the effort to go and ring people up and say, look, I'd love to catch up for a coffee this week. You got time? Yeah. And if you can line up a couple of meetings each week, straight away you've got 2 people you've tapped into, and then they've got people they know. Then the next week you tap into another 2 people. And it's all about personal connection. It's all about personal connection. If you're not prepared to get out and talk to people, meet people, and join their world and show interest in them, you're not going to get a lot back. So you've got to have the courage to say, I've got to push myself. I've got to push myself. And from guys from these backgrounds of high risk taking, pushing themselves is not an issue.
Yeah.
we can push ourselves. We've done it. We've done it for our whole careers, but it's just in a different way. So use that as confidence to say, I've pushed myself before, I can push myself again. Pick up the phone, make the calls.
Wicked. Man, that's awesome. Such good advice, because that really resonates with me, and I know it will for a lot of people as well, because that has taken me a heck of a long time to come to grips with that, to be able to do something like that. Because it's, I think for me, I was so used to being in amongst a group of people, the security of a pay for one, but being in a job that I loved for the second part, and being with people that I absolutely loved and cared about, like they were my family. So I never needed to go outside that. I never had a reason to go outside that. But once I left, I had pretty good reasons. Like, I need to provide for my wife and my children and their schooling and education, and but it wasn't easy. So I know people are absolutely going to resonate with that. And it took me a long time to build up some courage, so to speak, to be able to reach out and speak with people and be somewhat vulnerable, because I was still young, still not really sure about what I was going to do and what I was wanting to do, I should say. Yeah. So hearing that advice, don't be shy, get out there, talk to people, have a coffee, whatever it is, that personal connection. Fantastic, mate. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's great. And even as an example, we've got ourselves. You've reached out, you've decided to head down this path, which is unbelievable to spend the amount of time and energy building podcasts, but we've got a connection now.
Yeah.
We never
100%.
knew each other before.
Yeah, that's right.
We've got mutual acquaintances, but we haven't known each other. Now, straight away, this network's grown. I've got another great person in New Zealand that I can tap into. You've got another resource in WA or Australia. Yeah. So it doesn't stop. It's ongoing. It's forever.
Man, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Thanks for highlighting that too, Travis, because I feel exactly the same way. That Brian and I were speaking, actually, like, oh man, it'd be so cool. Imagine getting a group go to this Kokoda crossing with Travis's group. It's like, yeah, let's get on that. So these things, absolutely, like, and just a testament to the way that you communicate and the way that we've been connected through mutual friends and people that I respect, who have put your name forward for this podcast, and I can see why. So absolutely, mate. It's been a pleasure so far. Anyway, I got a couple more things on here. You also spoke about, and I think this ties in nicely with what you witnessed and saw, the drill rigs to then offsiders and drillers, becoming unemployed and then having to take pay cuts. And you speak about in your notes the importance of being multi-skilled and the need to have that. And so would you mind just speaking about that and what you've done to try to continually add to that? Obviously, the occupational health and safety stuff, which you've done and been involved in, but just the importance of being multi-skilled and your tips or advice for people on what they might be able to do. Because I think when people hear that, sometimes some people think, oh, I've got to go to uni, or I've got to do a degree, or I've got to do a whole bunch of study. But from my view, I don't think we really necessarily need to go down that route. You can if you want, but it'd be great to hear your points on that.
Yeah, I think you've got to really look at some things that you enjoy doing, stuff that resonates with you and keeps you interested. You shouldn't necessarily go and do a course because you think, oh, I've got to go and do something. You've got to try and target something that really tickles you, gets you excited. But also, I think what we need to really focus on is you've got to challenge yourself with things that perhaps you haven't done before, but you could well be good at. And you've got to keep challenging yourself. And even if it's a bit uncomfortable, you've got to learn those skills. And that's something that I've tapped into myself more recently now. I was given a fortunate opportunity, and I'll mention his name. His name's Bram Connolly. And,
I know Bram from X4 RAR guy.
And 2 Commando. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's now involved in the leadership space.
We were in the same recon platoon when it was 4 RAR Commando unit at the time. I'm pretty sure he was a section commander or team commander at the time. Yes. We weren't in the same team, but yeah. Yeah. So there you go. So another connection.
But a couple of things there. I actually reached out to him last year just to have a chat about his business, because I realised that he was growing his business mainly through social media that I'd noticed. And so I reached out to him just to get advice. So it was a cold call. Hey, this is who I am. I've been following you. Can I tap into your brains and find out what you've been up to and if it could help me with my business? And he was really forthcoming. And within a week, we were going for a walk down the coast there and having a chat about life and business and things like that. And through that, we've maintained a friendship, and now the opportunity has come up to help him in his leadership business. So I'm now going away and upskilling myself in this space with leadership programs and things like that I never would have thought previously that that's something that I would be doing. But I thought, hang on, perhaps I do have a bit to offer from a background, and you just need to then go away, upskill yourself, particularly in presentation skills. So talking to people, because a lot of us have a lot of knowledge, but it's the ability to impart that knowledge successfully, clearly and concisely, which is the art. That's the key. And you look at all these people that are successful, that have public personalities, and they've all got the ability to present well. So there's a lot of people that may have good academic knowledge, that are professors and whatnot, but you really couldn't listen to them for more than 10 or 15 minutes. Exactly right. So we need to look at, okay, what makes the good presenters good? Okay, are they skills I can practice and get better at? So once again, it's upskilling yourself to something new. And it's going to be hard, because it's not what we're necessarily comfortable in doing. But we need to keep trying things that take us out of that comfort zone. Otherwise, we're not growing and we're not getting stimulated or satisfied. So when you do something new, for example, the Kokoda presentation. So for my business, I've had to become better at presenting the material that we're going to offer on my tours. And my first couple of presentations were, pretty scratchy. But then you start to reflect and realise, okay, I've got to get better at doing this. So you've got to keep practicing. And whether that's just in your bedroom or in your bathroom or in your study at home, practice talking and practice presenting. Practice the way you speak, your inflections. Try not to use words, like when we present. And I'm probably saying a few things today that repeating myself, but
I do all the time.
And when you're listening to people, that really comes out, but you forget you're doing it when you're actually doing it. So you could take recordings of yourself and listen to actually how it sounds. So it takes hard work. It does take hard
Yeah.
work, but you've got to keep trying these things and learning new things. Otherwise, you can become quite stale and dead in the water. But it gives you the confidence to attack the next stage of your life. So you don't have to fall back upon what you've always known.
Yeah.
You go, no, I've got the confidence. I can practice. I've got the skills. I'm going to go to the next phase. So that's what I've been trying to tap into is getting those new skills, and then making sure that I'm competent enough to be successful in the next phase, because you don't want to seem like an idiot.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think I know for me, that's probably one of the biggest fears and challenges and obstacles and roadblocks for myself. Like even stepping into this podcasting arena, it's like, who's going to listen? Like who's going to listen to that? Who's going to want to come on for starters, and who's going to take the time to listen? And those challenges have been quite tough for me personally to try to overcome. So listening to you speaking about the need to present and communicate, you can have a whole bunch of knowledge, but if you can't deliver it, if people think you're a wanker, well, then they're not going to listen to you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And the other thing too is that we've got to overcome this fear of being embarrassed as well. You've got to put that to the side and just forget about it. Like you say to yourself, I'm not going to get embarrassed. I don't care. I'm giving this a go. I'm trying. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least you've given it a go and you've tried.
Yeah.
So the word embarrassment for me is something I've been trying to really tap into, and I would like to highlight that this is not easy. Like you've got it's an ongoing work in progress.
Yeah.
You don't just snap your fingers and go, right, not going to be embarrassed anymore. Right, this is easy. That's not the case. These are points of reference you can use to continually try and get better at.
Yeah.
So I think if we are going to step out of our comfort zones, the word embarrassment, just shelve it, and just keep trying. And if you crash and burn, who cares?
Try again, right?
Still
Just
alive.
get up again. Yeah.
Still go again. We've got another opportunity.
Awesome. I love that. Because it reminds me of a conversation that I had with a guy by the name of Bill Bestick. I have a lot of respect for him. Great mentor, great leader. But he spoke about, so he transitioned out of the New Zealand SAS and become a doctor. So he's an anaesthetist now.
Wow.
And a helicopter pilot. So he's based over in Sydney.
Oh.
He's an overachiever. Let's not wow him too much on this podcast here. No, he'll probably have a listen and have a laugh. I'll send it to him. But he spoke about failing his exams and stuff like that, and speaking to people, and he'd always ask them the question, because I think it got posed to him. And it's like, I don't think I can do this because he failed the exam. And it's like, well, you haven't failed, you quit. So he failed his exam a number of times, but just because he failed didn't mean, like, he still had the choice. The power was his to make that decision to stop and give up and go, that's it, I can't do it anymore, or pick himself up, dust himself off, and try again. Which is essentially sounds. I love the words that you're saying. Just try again. Don't worry about it. Who cares if you don't get it that first time? Like, you can still go again. So really appreciate you sharing those comments, Trav. They really resonate with me and just reinforce some of the words that have been shared so far. Yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask you, because we were speaking about spouses, partners, the other half. Sometimes they can feel, because I mentioned to you, I'm going to have the privilege of having one of the spouses of Harry Moffat, having Harry Moffat's spouse on the podcast. So another spouse within the industry of former SAS operators. But they really have a story, and likewise it is with police and TRG and Air Marshals and stuff. And so your situation and stuff, and the work that you've done, because you were in the Air Marshals program for 8 years, 9 years?
Yeah, 8 years.
8 years. And were you married then by that time, even prior to or whilst you were in?
No, I had a girlfriend during that time.
Yeah.
But I wasn't married.
And is it the same girlfriend or partner that you're with today?
No.
No. Okay. Yes. Sweet. No, that's all right. I was just really interested. I wanted to get your insights in terms of maybe from a relationship perspective, and maybe we still can. I'd like it if you would speak about that. Did you notice any challenges? And reason for this is because I know a lot of people that have served either in the police or Defence Force in general. Relationships are hard, especially when it's the nature of the work, and obviously it's a very secretive type of work that you personally have done and have been involved in, and it can feel difficult for the guys that I've served with to find something to speak with their spouse about, or to keep the communication as strong as what they might like, or particularly as strong as what the spouse might like. Did you encounter any challenges like that from a relation? And did you feel that the nature of your work negatively or in some way impacted your relationships in general?
I don't think it was a negative overall, but we certainly faced challenges going through that.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate that my girlfriend at the time was very, very supportive of what I was doing, particularly traveling to Iraq and going over there for quite a few months. And that would be something that military listeners would resonate with. You're going away for a lot longer than that, so you've got to have a really supportive partner. But yeah, we faced some big challenges, and I suppose from her perspective at the time, she relied upon her support network that she had around her friends and her family. That was really important for her. And I know that at one stage there, one of her friends, I'm not sure how good a friend that she might have been, but she advised her that she should dump me. She said, just get rid of him. Just get rid of him. If he's going to go away and do these crazy things and leave you here to worry, well, there's other guys out there that won't do that. Just go. Just dump him.
Oh my goodness.
So I guess everyone's got their own perspective on life, and maybe the characteristics which lead us to go away and do these things are characteristics that our partners actually like. Potentially, that's why they're attracted to people.
That's a great point.
Like us. So yeah, I think that everyone will go through this challenges. I've been very lucky to have very supportive partners at the time when I was air marshalling. They understood that my longest deployments were probably one to 2 weeks, so it wasn't that bad. But I was travelling interstate quite a bit, overseas quite a bit. But they supported me. They realised that's what I wanted to do, and I was still the same person. So they were fantastic. But yeah, geez, I think the stories of spouses, and I think that's great. You've been tapping into that, particularly with you spoke about potentially Harry's wife that you spoke to, and to get their perspective, because geez, everyone goes through stresses, don't they, behind the scenes that we don't appreciate. And one concept that I've been introduced to actually from Bram, which has been fantastic, is this concept of the invisible backpack. And the invisible backpack is something that we all carry around with ourselves, but it's invisible. So no one knows the stress and the dramas that you're going through at that particular time. And I think that some of the spouses, people have got no idea what they're going through. All the I suppose, not the accolades, but the attention goes on to the guys who are out overseas doing their thing. But people tend to forget about these poor people left behind and what they're going through. And not just 100%. Spouses, but parents, children. They're all affected by it. Yep. And I know that my parents were affected by my service in Iraq big time, because at that time was when all hell was breaking loose, and private contractors, private contractors were getting targeted, and we had that horrific attack at Fallujah and all that type of stuff. So everyone's suffering in some way, and they've got this little backpack they're carrying, and in that backpack, there are these mindset, these stresses and things in life that they're struggling with. But until we actually go and talk to them and find out what's in that backpack, you don't know.
Man, I love how you've shared that and that concept from Bram with the invisible backpack, because it really highlights to Brian and I one of the reasons why we wanted to create this podcast is that you hear that story, you hear that term, and it's a bit of a cliche. Everybody's got a story, but that's true. And everybody's got that invisible backpack, regardless of what type of life they've led or lived or walked or whatever. They're carrying something there, and there is, along with the stresses that you've highlighted and pointed out, along with the challenges that we don't see, there's also, from our perspective, the gold and the treasure in there as well that can be, if it's brought out and the person has the platform to be able to share that, the flow-on effect, the positive flow-on effect that can have down the line is incredible. Like Brian and I can't comprehend it, but we know that it's there. It's one of those things that we can't articulate very well, but we know that as people have received more from your invisible backpack through what you've been sharing here, for example, that one person at a time, one story at a time, one experience at a time, then evolves to the family, to the community, and hopefully broader, is going to be really helpful. So yeah, those are great points. I love how you mentioned that invisible backpack. That was from Bram, you said, eh?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
it's really good. It does resonate with people that we talk to. They go, yeah. I mean, we all know that there's that concept there that people are carrying issues, but to put it into a phrase makes it a bit easier to explain to people. So
it does.
So that ties really well into the word that we used yesterday quite a bit in part one, empathy.
Yeah.
So if you have that empathy, just say, look, that person might be under a bit of pressure right now. That's why they've reacted in the way they've reacted. Then there could be a good reason for that. A really good reason for that we actually don't know. And that's why it's so important to be empathetic and to tap into people and even ask them how they're traveling and do they want to talk about anything, or is there anything we can do to help them at this moment?
Yeah, nice.
So they might think, oh, that's my out. I can actually let go and talk to this person and explain what I'm going through, and that it might help the situation. It might diffuse a potential problem or an argument that you might be having.
Absolutely, great points. And what I wanted to ask you as well, because I think you've summed that up enough there nicely for us, was about the health and safety space and moving into that. How did you find that from your perspective, from the background that you have, policing, TRG, Air Marshals, a whole bunch, but I found it to be very different. Obviously I found the work easy, but I found it different in terms of, for me, the legislation requirements. So that might not have been quite that difficult for you because of your background, but for me, the Mine Safety Inspection Act and regs was a mission for me to get my head around, and I still don't have my head around it. And just the Australia, New Zealand standards for certain things, because then I was doing the training and assessing, and I needed to be able to refer to the right documents in regards to the equipment that's been used, whether it's confined space or whether it's work at heights or rope rescue or whatever. It's just, how did you find that, having the experience that you have, but morphing and delving into the I guess somewhat bureaucratic health and safety aspects of that? I know they're coming with a good reason and good intentions, but some of it, from my experience, was quite long-winded to achieve a result, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so how did you find that?
I found it challenging, and I continue to find it very challenging to this day. You've
good.
summed it up. You've absolutely summed up perfectly. I found it challenging in so much as when I went into that space, you're actually on your own a fair bit in that health and safety department. So you become almost like a policeman. Yeah. So it's similar to what I left. However, in the police force, you've got a big group around you that support you. You can tap into that support. But when you join the private sector in health and safety, you're your own person. That's it. And people look at you as being this handbrake that's about to rock up and stop their job, cause them grief. And you can feel it. You can actually feel that negativity.
Yeah.
And who do you go back to talk to about that?
Your desk.
No one.
Yeah.
So you are quite isolated, and also there is a lot of bureaucracy and red tape and paperwork that's been created over the years that I don't necessarily agree with. Yeah. And I don't think that a lot of people these days, I think people are finally getting it, that we've built a very big rod for our own back when we don't necessarily have to. So we've gone way and above legislation requirements.
Yeah.
And it's just become very inefficient. And I try and look back at it to the work we used to do in the police and the military. And we used to do paperwork and documents for certain operations. You do operational orders as part of your planning, but you wouldn't do all this paperwork every day when you went training. You know, we're climbing up ladders onto the second floor of the MOE house, and we're smashing glass and running through with guns and stuff. And we didn't stop and do a take five or create a JSA every time we did it. We were trained on the job, and we discussed how we're going to do it, and we were shown how to do it. Yeah. And that's how we went through. So for me, that was a far better way of training and learning, was to talk about things and be trained on the job like that, than always stopping and doing more paperwork, which puts more stress on people. Yeah. You lose momentum. And I think there's got to be a better way of doing it. And I try and implement change here and there, but you're also facing challenges of the wider, broad industry and businesses who seem to think that more paperwork will actually save their ass
Yeah.
in a courtroom or a hearing and that sort of thing. But when you tap into the experience of the lawyers, and I've got my network and I've got people I can talk to, they say it's not actually the case.
Yeah.
And we've built a rod for our own backs in many regards. So that in that way, that risk management, occupational health and safety space, certainly in Australia, is a challenging area.
Yeah. Well, no, it's great to hear you speak about that, and sounds like we have a lot of the same experiences in that regard to that with regards to those. So, mate, that's it's been very cool to hear. Those were, hang on, let me just check these notes here. You've gone over that things that would challenge and take you outside your comfort zone. You've spoken about that as well, really well. Mate, I right now from my side don't have any further comments or questions at this stage, other than to ask you, is there anything in particular right now? Because sometimes what happens when we've had guests on, I've received messages a day or two later, sometimes a week or two later, going, "Oh man, I wish I had spoken about this, or I could have spoken about, or this popped up in my head since we spoke yesterday or day before yesterday, whatever." It'd be great next time we catch up, and we can still catch up again later on, because hopefully the next catch up will be talking about Kokoda crossing and coming across there on one of your treks, and experiencing that. But has there been anything since we caught up Saturday, and there doesn't need to have been, but is there anything that you felt that you might have wanted to speak a little bit more about for our listeners today?
I think one of the things that I've probably revisited lately for myself is my own is education for myself and learning. And I don't think we can put a price on the value of reading and learning new things. And one of the conscious decisions I've made lately is I found, because I've been struggling a lot with, the business has obviously taken a massive hit the last 2 years. Girlfriend at the time, a girlfriend now, we've had our struggles from being based interstate. Because in Australia we've had some really significant border closures. We haven't been able to move around. So I was really struggling in many regards mentally with that, and also tapping into the news cycle each day was doing my head in, really doing my head in, because it was the same news over and over again, and it was all negative. And all through, I mean, we know what the media is about. We know what the mainstream media is about. They're really about engagement. And to get engagement, they really need people to be enraged and upset and angry. So then that they go onto the cycle and they click on the links and it goes through, and that's how they get their revenue. I mean, I think everyone really knows that. So I found that I wasn't learning anything new. In some ways, I was almost stagnating. Like we mentioned that word before, I was stagnating. So I've made a big conscious decision, and I really don't tap into the news much at all anymore, but I'm reading more. I'm reading. I'm getting books and I'm reading. And whether it's, if you're not a great reader, that's okay. There's audio books you can use, but learn things that are going to help you get better and get better at your job, get better at being a better person, and just growing yourself, because we don't get that from the mainstream media these days. There is little there that is helping you grow and get better and learn. So find a topic that you like, and there are so many reference materials out there. There's so many books. There's a great site at the moment, Brothers and Books, on Instagram, run by veterans, Brothers and Books, and they've got great ideas on things to read. So don't be afraid to focus your energies, because we only have limited energy each day. Focus that on tasks and focus that on learning that's going to help you get better in aspects of your life. So that's one big thing, a big change that I've made recently, and I'm feeling a whole lot better for it. My mind is clear, far more clear. And I think, once again, that it's the adaptability, these skills of adaptability that we've learnt all through our careers. I'm just using that again to try and adapt to my situation and make it better for me. So that's one big thing that I've taken home the last couple of months.
Man, beautiful. Can I ask what topics or what types of books are you reading at the moment, or are you interested in?
Yeah, so probably it ties in with what I'm learning about my new vocation in leadership and those sort of topics. So there's some great books on leadership. So Bram Connolly has written a great book, The Commando Way, which is worth looking at. You would have heard of Jocko Willink. Jocko does some interesting stuff in the leadership space. So it's good to get people's opinions from different walks of life, because not everyone has the silver bullet. I've also tapped into a great book recently called The Resilience Shield. And
with
written
Tim
by
and Ben and Tim Curtis and Ben Pronk and Dan Pronk.
Yeah, correct. So that's a fantastic book, and that just highlights some areas that we can work on to help ourselves if we are struggling. So that's another great resource. So they're the sort of books, as well as the military history that I'm always reading. I'm always wanting to learn about and get better with my understanding of history, especially around the Kokoda campaign and World War II. So there's a lot of books like that. So they're the things that I'm tapping into at the moment, and it's really, really helping my mind. It's great.
Awesome. So good to hear, mate. And really, very, very pleasing to hear that you're in a good space, that you've shared some tools and information that I know can and will be very helpful, like that reading and education and learning and exposing ourselves to that is ongoing. Like you said, we'll continually be learning right through to the day that we eventually depart this life. So love the fact that you've shared that. Loved the comments that you've spoken about in terms of this follow-up from our first initial catch-up, and really enjoyed the laughs with you along the way and connecting with you, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend and share this space with you, to hear you speak about the topics which you've again so openly and warmly shared with us and with our audience today, mate. And I'll be making sure to send this through to you once it's about to go out. There'll be a few little trailers that will come out prior to it. And mate, we look forward to reconnecting with you again in the future. We want to take this time to just wish you and your loved ones, those closest to you, a very safe and Merry Christmas, mate, and all the best for the new year, and particularly with Kokoda Crossing. We look forward to seeing the success of that and seeing that grow. And we look forward to having you back on the podcast again to see where we're at and what you've been able to achieve and do, and share some more insights with our audience, mate. And so nothing but the best. And thanks again for your time.
Oh, that's great, Joe. And thanks to you and Brian. I think what you fellas are doing is sensational, and you are going to help people. And anything you can do in life that helps other people is very, very rewarding. So congratulations on the podcast. And for any listeners who are keen on a journey, we've got some good stuff planned for next year still. We've got the Kimberley trip up into the wild, remote Kimberley in June next year, which is going to be a spectacular journey with my mate Terry Hewitt, who I spoke about, bushcraft and navigation work up there. And we've also got a Cape to Cape trek happening down between Dunsborough and Augusta. That's coming up in March next year.
Yep.
And hopefully in the second half of next year, we will be venturing back to PNG. But that's a watch this space at the moment. So if anyone wants to jump on these amazing trips, then give us a buzz. And happy to talk about anything as well. So if any of your listeners just want to have a chat about life and tap into my experiences, and I'm always very open to that as well. So thanks, Joe.
Awesome, mate. Thank you very much for that, Travis. Appreciate it. And as always, we sign off these podcasts or this series, Who Dares Wins.